Game of Thrones from Elden Ring to the Young Wolf Lord. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Robb the Young Wolf, Westeros, Kingdom of the North, Winterfell. Due to the accidental death of the previous Hand of the King, the Northern Lord Ned Stark was recently invited by King Robert to the capital to serve as the new Prime Minister of the kingdom. So now all the affairs of Winterfell are managed by Robb Stark, the eldest son of Duke Ned. In a meeting room in Winterfell, Robb was not in a very happy mood at this time. He held a secret letter and looked at the Northern advisor Maester Luwin with a serious face. King Robert died, but my sister Sansa said in the letter that my father Ned Stark was treasoning, and she also hoped that I would go to the capital in person to plead guilty to the new king. There was no mention of Eryr in the letter. Does she think her sister does not exist? Maester Luwin came from the most famous academic authority in the continent, the Citadel. After graduating from the Citadel, he has been serving the Stark family. He knows the red tape of the nobles best. He patiently explained to the young master in front of him. It was written by your sister, but it was obviously instructed by the queen. This is the king's order, and you must obey it. They summoned you to King's Landing to swear allegiance to the new king, otherwise it will be considered treason. Robb smiled lightly and sat on the chair. This Queen Cersei is interesting. She imprisoned my father and asked me to plead guilty. The Mad King used this clumsy trick to kill my grandfather. Does she want to use the same trick against the Starks again? Theon Greyjoy, who was sitting next to him, showed an inexplicable smile. He was the adopted son of the Duke of Stark and a friend of Robb since childhood. Then do as your majesty wishes. Gather all the vassals and have them swear allegiance to my father. Now is the time to test this loyalty and friendship. Maester Luwin was surprised when he received the order. He did not expect that this 15-year-old young man who he watched grow up would have such courage to directly declare war on the Lannister family, where Queen Cersei was. Very good. I think your father will be proud of you. He nodded with satisfaction and left the meeting room to send a message to the nobles in the north who were loyal to the Stark family. Soon, dozens of ravens were released at the highest point of Winterfell Castle at the same time, spreading the signal of war in all directions. The crows' cries, which were getting farther and farther away, were like the horns of attack on the battlefield, hitting the hearts of every Winterfell resident. Theon looked at the young master of the wolf family who had grown up with him and had a noble status. Are you afraid? Afraid? Robb picked up a glass of bright red wine and drank it all. I haven't known what fear is for a long time, my dear Theon. At this time, Robb was no longer the young master of the wolf family who was brave and resourceful but politically incompetent. His soul was occupied by Lin Ke from Blue Star. However, this is not the first time that Lin Ke has traveled through time and space. After inexplicably traveling to the game world of Elden Ring while playing games, he thought he could return to the world after completing the game. Unexpectedly, he became the King of Elden and traveled to the world of Game of Thrones instead. Although all the equipment is gone, the various spells and prayers I learned have been memorized deep in my soul. As long as I want to use them, I can cast them. What's more interesting is that it's not the low energy characters with intelligence 9. As expected, the noble wizard is the only answer to this version. The world of Game of Thrones is full of dangers. Many gods have records of performing miracles, such as the Weird Night King, the Lord of Light who can revive the dead, the Three-Eyed Raven who can travel through time and space, and the 7 gods who are widely believed. I just don't know if killing these things can drop things and exchange them for equipment. On the other side of the continent of Westeros, the Dragon Queen should have hatched 3 little dragons by now. I wonder how the dragon heart in this world tastes. Robb, who had just traveled here and had not yet changed his mind, habitually thought about some strange questions. But soon Robb adapted to this new world. The most important thing now is to deal with the war. In terms of single combat, Robb is now very confident that he can beat anyone or monster, even if the Night King or the King of Light comes in person. But if it comes to war, Robb shows a resistance from his body. He doesn't want to be in a situation of one against many. He still has to rely on his men to charge into battle. Coming to the map, Robb began to think about how to proceed with the next battle. This is a battle between the Stark family and the Lannister family, a fight between wolves and lions. In the original book, Robb seemed to be advancing triumphantly at the beginning, but many internal and external troubles were covered up by victory, so that everyone could not see the dangerous situation of the north. As the war progresses, there will be rebellion in the north, and the pirate families outside will take advantage of Robb's expedition to harass the territory below the north. The opponent Lannister family should not be underestimated. Moreover, the two younger brothers of the former King Robert will also rise up in rebellion and be involved in this game of power. Outside the Great Wall of the North, the Night King is rubbing his hands, ready to attack the mainland at any time. On another continent, the descendants of the Targaryen family once again obtained a dragon, preparing to replicate the feat of their ancestors riding a dragon to kill all around. With the current strength of the North, it is still too difficult to sweep across the continent. Although I'm strong, I don't have the high mobility of a dragon mount, so it is also difficult to replicate the actions of the Targaryen family. After having a general overview of the current situation, Robb quickly overturned all the strategic plans of the Wolf family in the original book and started a new plan. Store up food and wait to claim the throne. Make friends with distant countries and attack nearby ones and nibble away at the continent. This is the wisdom of our ancestors. After determining a long-term goal, Robb began to think about the upcoming problems. A group of lords loyal to the north will soon come to Winterfell. Although Robb conquered a group of people in the original book, there are still people with ulterior motives. I will never allow such a situation to happen again. We must also prepare for the problem of food and grass. Although it has been summer in recent years, there is still a lot of food and grass in Winterfell, but fighting is all about money. Without good logistical supplies, our army can't hold on for long. These two issues are urgent. Although Robb is not prepared to fight to King's Landing in one go as before, the war with the Lannister family must be fought at this point. His sister must be rescued. The blood connection of family members cannot be given up, especially in such a medieval fantasy background. Otherwise no one will be willing to follow you. If your reputation is ruined, you must fight back if you are provoked. Once the head wolf is considered weak, there will be rebellious voices inside without the need for external enemies to take action. As for his imprisoned father Ned, it is estimated that there is no way to save the situation. Unless the three little dragons of the Dragon Mother are grown up and sent here now, it is impossible for him to rescue Ned before the King Joe, who loves his people like his own children, goes crazy. That's it for now. Problems must be solved one by one. Robb closed his eyes and rested for a while after overworking his brain. After a long time, he opened his eyes again, and the reflection of the flames in the fireplace danced in his pupils. From now on, become Robb Stark. Let's start. Winter is coming to the Lannister family. Chapter 2, 7 and Skinning. The feudal system is generally practiced in Westeros. The Great Lord divides the territory among his subordinates, and the subordinates divide it among those who are loyal to him. The Great Lord can command his subordinates, but he cannot command his subordinates' subordinates. The vassal of the vassal is not my vassal, the lord of the lord is not my lord. Of course, some perverted nobles will hold conservative opinions. After all, how can my daughter's daughter not be my daughter? Under this system, Robb only needs to conquer a few of his more powerful earls. Prepare a temporary site for 15,000 people to be stationed. Let the craftsmen make carts and tents, and prepare food and supplies. We can't expect our lords to bring all the supplies. In the meeting room, Robb was instructing Maester Luwin to place the soldiers, and suddenly there was a knock on the door, interrupting Robb. Robb, the people of the Serwyn family are here. Robb smiled. The Serwyn family is the first to arrive. This is the testimony of the purest friendship. I want to meet him in person. Maester Luwin on the side reminded, the Serwyn family is the closest to Winterfell. They can arrive in half a day. This will not hinder the loyalty of the Serwyn family. In the original book, the Serwyn family is one of the strongest families in the north. The patriarch, Mage Serwyn, was seriously injured and died in the battle for Robb, and the only eldest son, Clay Serwyn, also died in the battle for Robb to recapture Winterfell. It can be said that they are strong and full of loyal martyrs. If such a family is not given an important task, will it go close to the skinning family, who have ulterior motives? With his father's adopted son Theon and a group of personal guards, Robb came to the outside of Winterfell and saw a team holding a white-bottomed black axe flag slowly approaching from a distance. This team has about 2,000 people, with an estimated 300 people on horseback, and the rest are infantry. At the front of the team, there were 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, the chief of the Seven family and his children. Robb came in front of the 3 people, looked at the chief of the Seven family, and laughed to welcome him. Be prepared for battle. The motto of the Seven family is indeed well deserved. The sword of the Seven family will always dance for the Starks. The chief of the Seven family saw that Robb was only a 15 or 16-year-old child, and he couldn't help feeling a little uneasy. He was absolutely loyal to the Stark family, but war was not a joke. I heard that this Robb wanted to go to the battle himself. How could a child lead the 3 armies? Does he have the ability? Robb nodded. Stark will not forget his friendship with the Seven family. Theon, you go and help to arrange the army. Lord Severn and I have something to talk about in the castle. It was Robb's bad taste to specially let Theon arrange the army. In the future, Theon would kill the eldest son of the Seven family, but now he had to greet him with a smile. Arriving at the conference room, there were only Robb and Chief Severn. Robb poured a glass of wine for Mickey Severn and warmly invited him to sit down. Although Mickey Severn doubted Robb's ability to lead troops, he did not hesitate to send troops to help the Stark family and directly brought all the combat forces in the territory. I brought 300 cavalry and 200 regular infantry this time. The rest of the infantry were temporarily recruited. They were basically from farmers and craftsmen, and their combat effectiveness was average. Robb comforted, it doesn't matter. The Lannister family has been mining gold for hundreds of years. I don't believe they can still pull out a team that can rival the North. The soldiers in the North are not in numbers, but in combat effectiveness. Mickey Severn looked at the confident Robb and felt a little relieved. The war is imminent. If the coach is a coward and incompetent, just surrender directly, and fewer people will die. Uncle Mickey, you are my father's good friend. The friendship between our 2 families has continued since the time of our ancestors thousands of years ago, so I want to make a request to you. I hope you will not refuse it. Mickey Severn was flattered. You say. I hope you will give me the command of 500 conscripts. In name, Robb can give Mickey Severn orders and let him take his men to fight on the battlefield, but Robb cannot directly command the soldiers under Mickey Severn. They can completely disobey orders. What Robb wants is the direct command of these soldiers. This request is a bit excessive, as Robb said. It means that even if the people of the Seven family don't want to help the Stark family fight, the nobles in the garrison can leave, but these conscripts must stay. Whether they will be returned in the future, and when they will be returned, depends on the mood of our young city lord. More than 500 soldiers are extremely valuable wealth. Mickey Severn hesitated. He came here to help, and never thought of giving away most of his family assets. Uncle Mickey, I need your support. Robb looked at his face and said seriously, I swear to God, after this war, you will get a satisfactory reward. After thinking for a long time in silence, Mickey Severn finally raised his head and looked at this young man whose specific quality he didn't know. Okay. He didn't say anything else, because trust and loyalty had overflowed this small meeting room. Robb held his hand. The Stark family will always remember this friendship. There is one more thing, that Uncle Mickey needs your attention. The Flayed family will come soon. Although their family has submitted to us, they have been loyal to us for the shortest time, and have the greatest ambition. At this moment, the North is facing a life and death situation. I'm worried about them, and need you to pay more attention to their movements. Robb's meaning is not as simple as it seems. His deeper meaning is that he hopes that the Seven family will try their best to find out the movements of the Flayed family and report to him immediately if there is any abnormal situation. This time, Mickey Severn did not hesitate at all. I remember it. The atmosphere between the 2 relaxed, and they talked about some old stories. The head of the Seven family recalled the great achievements he had made in following Ned to overthrow the Mad King. He became more and more excited as he talked, and he wanted to fly to King's Landing immediately to kill King Joe and Cersei and rescue Duke Ned. Robb was also very moved. The Stark family had a deep foundation in the north. Even if he had nothing, as long as he was the eldest son of Stark, there would be countless lords working for him. In the next few days, lords from the north came one after another. Most of them brought all their belongings like the Seven family, and they didn't even care whether their territory would be harassed by bandits and pirates. This was the appeal of the Stark family in the north. Robb also began to get busy, meeting these lords one by one, arranging their camps, and mobilizing food and grass to maintain supplies. The original Robb also handled these things very well, but he only pretended to be calm on the surface. In fact, he was very panicked. After dealing with difficult things, he would even go back to his brother to cry and vent, and then continue to pretend to be energetic during the day. In fact, he has done very well. For a 15-year-old child, it is simply an extraordinary performance. But at this moment, Robb is not only not panicked, but also enjoys this feeling. He has experienced death countless times, and he has killed many powerful enemies with his own hands. But it is the first time to dispatch troops and make plans from thousands of miles away. It is really interesting. Chapter 3 Military Law Team's Iron Family. This is pure murder. I demand blood for blood. In the meeting room of Winterfell, Lord Mage Severn's face flushed, and he roared at the lords of the north. My people were just defending themselves. It was your people who followed them secretly. After being discovered, they were not as good as them in fighting. They deserved to die. The one who confronted the Seven family was a man who looked gentle, but anyone could see that he was cruel in his bones. He was the current Earl of the notorious Flade family, the Bolton family, Rose Bolton, nicknamed Old Flade. Rose Bolton's voice was not loud, but gentle, which made everyone present concentrate to hear what he said clearly. Mickey Seven was furious. Bullshit. What kind of duel is this? Can stabbing someone in the back be called a duel? It's clearly a sneak attack. Murder. Putting that aside, you are spying on each other at this time. Do you want to destroy the alliance? If your men suddenly kill people, it's not destroying the alliance. Both sides insisted on their own opinions. The other lords did not speak, but looked meaningfully at the young man sitting in the first seat, their current nominal leader, young Wolf Robb. They wanted to see how Robb would deal with this matter. In fact, this matter was ultimately due to Robb's order to Mickey Seven to spy on Old Skinner's men. Unexpectedly, he was discovered and killed by the other party before he had been spying for a few days. The strength of his men was still a little different, but it was just the right opportunity to take some power into his own hands. Robb shrugged helplessly and then slowly spoke under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Killing someone means paying with your life. Blood debt means paying with blood. This is a rule that has been passed down from ancient times. Lord Robbos, hand over the man. I will kill him myself. Old Flade's face suddenly became ugly, and he stared at Robb with gloomy eyes. He originally thought that Robb, who was only a teenager, was a little guy who was easy to control. Even if he had some skills, he still needed to hone them. Unexpectedly, after entering the city, he was monitored and suppressed everywhere, and the other party did not give him a chance at all. The Flade family is also very powerful in the north, so they have always been dissatisfied with the management of the Stark family and often rebelled. But 300 years ago, the leader of the Stark family led his soldiers to surround the Flade family in the castle for several months, and they had to surrender when they ran out of ammunition and food. Nowadays, Ned Stark's prestige in the north is unmatched, and he has a close relationship with King Robert. Even if Old Flade wants to replace him, he is powerless. But now Robert died suddenly, Ned's life and death are unknown, and the Stark family has only Robb, a teenager, as the head of the family. This gave the old peeling a glimmer of hope, so he had already begun to secretly contact forces outside the north frequently, hoping to seize the floors and kill them with one blow. As for why he did not contact and communicate with the forces in the north, it was because they were all die-hard fans of the Stark family. The old peeling had no doubt that he had just said the plan in the last second, and the next second the Stark family's army would appear in front of him. This time, the old peeling was indeed in the wrong, but the old peeling just wanted to make a fuss and fool the matter, so that the lords of the north would see the weakness of the young wolf. When the head wolf showed fatigue, it was the best time for the wolves to attack. but he was a little surprised that Robb's decisiveness did not seem to be what a 15-year-old child should show. Now the people's hearts and morality are not on the side of the old peeling, and he failed to intimidate the young wolf, so the old peeling decided to hold back for now. As you wish, Lord. Robb got an unsatisfactory answer. In fact, he hoped that old Flay would reject him, so that he would give him a reason that was hard to refuse, and further enhance his prestige. Looking around at these loyal but unruly lords, Robb cleared his throat. Everyone, our goal is to enter King's Landing and rescue my father. You are all lords of the north. I don't want what happened today to happen again. If you use all your energy on internal friction, not only will King's Landing fail to be taken, but we will also die without a burial place. So, in order to maintain the combat effectiveness of our army and to prevent such murders from happening again, I decided to set up a military court. All the lords present frowned. They didn't know what this military court did, but they had a bad feeling just by hearing the name. I have asked Mr. Lewin to draft a military order, which clearly states what should be done and what should not be done. The lords all understood this. Although they did not have a written military order, everyone had their own rules, and each lord would also constrain his subordinates in a set of rules and regulations, so there was no reaction. All teams will be unified to adapt to all military orders. You can add your own rules, but you must not delete anyone. All soldiers in the Northern Army who violate the military order will be executed by the military law team I just mentioned according to the military order. The lords below were in an uproar. In the past, everyone led their own soldiers to fight. The lord wanted someone to go, and he would lead his men to charge, and that was it. As for the internal affairs of the team, they would solve them by themselves. Now that the young wolf has obtained the power to punish part of the army, it makes them a little uncomfortable. This is a good thing. We can all agree on the rules, so that some people will not work hard and let their deserters go. No, who will preside over the military justice team? If Old Peeler is allowed to be the leader, I will be the first to quit. What are you arguing about? Will the young wolf lord let Old Peeler, that coward, be the leader? Use your brain. I object. This matter is very complicated. Why should my men be handed over to others? Old Peeler's face became gloomy. He knew that this group of people were playing a double act, just to prevent him from becoming the leader of the military justice team. There was a lot of noise below, but Robb, who made this suggestion, sat on the chair and played with Grey Wind's chin, making the dire elf purr comfortably. When everyone's voices of discussion had subsided, Robb shifted his attention from Grey Wind to the group of lords under him. Are you done discussing this? I have already chosen a candidate for the captain of the military court. It is Lord Maggie Mormont of Bear Island. A lord objected on the spot. Huh. A woman. Well, let a woman. Someone covered his mouth. Shh. Do you want to be beaten? He is the Earl of Bear Island. Robb smiled and introduced to the lord who was still a little unconvinced. People from Bear Island are all powerful warriors. Maggie's brother is the current commander-in-chief of the Night's Watch, and her nephew is the former King's Guard. As for herself, as she spoke, a middle-aged woman stood up. She looked to be in her 50s or 60s, with white hair, scars all over her face, and wearing a coat made of wolf skin and bear skin sewn together. She was tall and strong, more than twice the size of Robb now, and more ferocious than most of the men present. What was a little strange was that her right hand was wrapped in a bandage, and it looked like she had just been injured. She was angry without being intimidating. She slowly scanned the lords present. Under the intimidation of this momentum, fewer lords dared to look at her. The lords who had boasted before wanted to lower their heads under the table. Maggie laughed. Ha 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 ha. It seems that some people's balls have shrunk into their stomachs. Then, she left her seat and came to Robb's side. Looking at this little kid who was 2 or 3 times smaller than herself, she recalled the scene when the two first met. At that time, Maggie, like many people, was still a little suspicious of this child. She wanted to give the lord in front of her a warning, so she used a little force when shaking hands. As a result, her right hand was wrapped in bandages. According to the Maester's examination, these broken bones may take a month before she can hold a sword again. From then on, Maggie offered her loyalty without reservation. She knelt down willingly in front of Robb. Thank you for your trust. I will be impartial and spread your justice and fairness to every corner of the army. Everyone was surprised to see Robb sitting in front of the behemoth with a normal expression, casually putting his hand on Maggie's head to honor her. When did this young wolf tame this unruly giant bear? Robb smiled and said, it's settled. By the way, if anyone objects, you can take your people back to your castle now, but I promise that when I come back from fighting the Lannisters, I will pull you out of your bed, chop off your heads and hang them on a spear. As for whether I can do it, my enemies will know. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 4, Gretchen Cuts Meat. When the Stark family's army appeared in Winterfell, everyone knew that the army was about to set out. Bran Stark sat on a chair, looking at the huge crowds of people in Winterfell, and was a little dazed for a moment. Even when the king came last time, there were not so many people. However, Robb had made a lot of arrangements early on. Although there are many people now, it is not crowded. Each family is located in one side, and there are few conflicts between them. It seems very orderly. Bran heard that this was the peace that his brother Robb had to chop off more than a dozen heads with his own hands to gain. How many people came before? Bran asked Mr. Lewin curiously. Mr. Lewin has been very busy lately. He wrote and drew on paper as he answered. More than 12,000 people. The Stark family has also brought more than 2,000 people. There is not much food in the city. The team must set out soon. Otherwise we will all go out to beg for food on the streets. With less than 15,000 people, can we rescue father? Lewin's scalp numbed as he calculated these numbers. There are also swamp people. Earl Manderley and Earl Flint in the south will join when the army reaches their territory. There should be knights from the Barrowlands near the King's Road who want to try their luck. Bran felt a little relieved to hear that many more people would join. He watched the white sunburst star flag on a black background of the Stark family slowly enter the city and felt a little uneasy. My brother should host a banquet for them. The Stark family is not only one family with your family more than 1,000 years ago, but among these nobles who have come, they, the Seven family, the Umber family, and the Bolton family are the most powerful, so your brother will definitely host a banquet for him in the largest banquet hall. Because there were too many nobles coming, and most of them brought their sons, the reception room of Winterfell could not accommodate them at all. Robb could only invite them in batches according to their strength. Bran didn't like this kind of occasion. As Robb's younger brother, he would sit on Robb's left, which was the most honorable position besides Robb. But as a man with two crippled legs, he could feel that the lords were staring at him with resentful eyes. While let a cripple sit in that position. No one said this, but Bran had heard it countless times. Tonight was another banquet, and he had to sit in that position again, accepting everyone's strange eyes. If possible, Bran really hoped that he could get a serious illness now and get better after those people left. However, if all of them left, Robb would also leave. Although Bran was still young, he understood the ruthlessness of war. If Robb really had an accident on the battlefield, the Stark family would really collapse. The father, who was still in the capital, as well as Sansa and Arya, could not be saved. Time passed by in his wild thoughts, and soon it was time to entertain the Stark family. The people sent by Robb asked Bran to dress up and prepare to go to the banquet hall. Bran felt a little headache, sighed, and changed his clothes and set off. On the way to the banquet hall, Bran felt that this road was more difficult than his brother's road to King's Landing. Finally, he arrived at the door of the banquet hall and opened the door. Many lords were sitting around a long table with noisy and excited voices. There were also several small tables next to them where some young people were sitting. Robb was the first to see Bran arrive. He stood up, took the wheelchair armrest from the servant, and pushed Bran to the position on his left-hand side. Bran seemed to hear those illusory questioning voices again, but his face remained normal. Under the influence of his brother, he learned to hide his emotions and not let others see his thoughts. After settling his brother, Robb raised his glass and said, "Welcome to Lord Rickard Stark. The Stark family will never forget this friendship. Now our team has been assembled. Tonight is not only a banquet for Uncle Rickard, but also a meeting before we set off. The people of the Seven family, the Umber family, the Bolton family and the Stark family have all arrived. Together with the soldiers of the Stark family, the power of the North has been gathered. It is time to start the war. Save old Duke Ned. Go to King's Landing and kill that old bitch. When I and the old Duke fought the Mad King, I didn't know where that bitch was sold. Now she dares to imprison Ned. Let's go to King's Landing and kill her. As soon as the declaration of the expedition came out, the lords of the North were excited. Some of them were eager to make achievements, some were out of comradeship with Ned, and some were simply loyal to the Stark family. After the lords had vented their anger, Robb smiled and continued, "Everyone, be ready when you go back. The army will set out at noon tomorrow." At this time, a rough voice sounded, and the voice was so loud that it was like a thunder in people's ears. "Our family's team must go in front, at least not behind the servant family." The loud noise scared everyone present. Only Robb looked normal, with a faint smile on his lips. Robb looked at the man, John Umber, the patriarch of the Umber family. Because his son who was showing off was also named John, people generally called him Big John. He was more than 2 meters tall. Even if he was wearing heavy armor, you could see that his sturdy body was full of amazing strength. The first impression people had of him was that of a ferocious beast. Robb said slowly, "Great John, you are in my army now. We can discuss the specific plan, but the result may not be what you want. Finally, this is the most important point. After the military order comes out, no matter whether you are satisfied or not, you must execute it. Do you understand?" Great John didn't listen to Robb's words at all. "What military order to execute? If my team is behind, I will go back immediately." The faces of Maggie Severn and Rickard Karstark on the side changed. Robb was not in a hurry. He sat down leisurely on the chair and looked at Maggie, the captain of the military law team who had just taken office not long ago. "If Great John really leaves, according to the latest military law, what is the crime of swearing an oath to me and then deserting in the face of battle?" Maggie stood up suddenly and looked at the other party with her body size that was not inferior to Great John. She held the knife at her waist and uttered 2 words word by word, "Behead." No one doubted that, as long as Robb gave the order, she would chop the other party without hesitation. "You said I deserted the battlefield, you pissant green little devil?" The Gretchen had no reaction to beheading, but when he heard the humiliating word of deserting the battlefield, he instantly became furious. He had fought with Ned all his life, and he was upright and loyal, and he regarded honor as more important than life. When he heard this, his mind was in a mess and he reached out to his waist to get the knife. Ouch. Grey Wind, who had been sitting at Robb's feet and gnawing on a bone, suddenly smelled the smell of danger. He suddenly jumped onto the table and looked at the Gretchen who was about to draw his knife against his master. His eyes were wide open, and he opened his mouth wide to bite the Gretchen. This scene happened so quickly that the nobles present did not react. But what happened next made everyone unable to react. An invisible suction gravity suddenly appeared on Robb, and Bran, who was close to Robb, felt it most obviously. He felt that he was about to leave the wheelchair and fly towards Robb. Grey Wind kept the posture of biting in midair, and the next second his body flew backwards under the influence of this force, landing accurately on the table in front of Robb. This is a kind of gravity magic, which can pull the enemy towards him. Robb controlled the direction and the main target, mainly pulling Grey Wind, otherwise everyone in the room would lose balance and fall to the ground in an instant. What kind of magical power is this? Everyone's brain was blank for a short time. The old gods are above. Is this power a miracle? Woo 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 woo. Grey Wind, who was pulled back by gravity, still instinctively wanted to pounce forward, but his whole body was suppressed by a hand. It was Robb's hand. He grabbed Grey Wind's spine and pressed him directly on the table. The struggling wolf claws overturned the pots and pans in front of Bran. Everyone stared at Robb, who was leaning on the chair with a relaxed look. What kind of powerful force is this? And he can easily suppress the dire wolf with one hand. Exclamation mark. Only Maggie was not surprised at all. Robb could crush his own hand bones, so it was not so exaggerated to suppress a dire wolf. Robb held down the huge and frenzied dire wolf with one hand and explained to it with a smile, "Don't be so excited, Grey Wind. Great John just wants to help us cut the most delicious mutton." Chapter 5, stationed in Callan Bay. At night, Robb personally sent Bran back to his room to rest. You know magic. What Osha said is true. There is real magic. Look at how they look tonight. They are almost ready to give you their hearts. Bran excitedly discussed everything that had just happened in the banquet hall. Even Bran, a teenager, could see that after tonight, all the lords present no longer had any resentment in their hearts, especially the loudest Great John. After Robb's move, he willingly knelt before Robb's throne, just like Maggie on Bear Island. I bet that, even if you let him die now, he wouldn't blink an eye. Robb sent Bran to the bedroom and touched his brother's head with some doting. Bran was at the peak of his appearance at this time, and anyone who saw him had to say that he was cute. I won't let him go to die. He is a loyal subordinate. Bran didn't care about all this. Now his admiration for his brother reached its peak. You can definitely rescue father and sister, right? And Arya, although she always steals my limelight. Robb shook his head. I can't guarantee it. You've seen the false Emperor Joffrey. He is actually the product of close relatives and has a bit of abnormal personality. I can't guarantee that I can get to him and rescue my father before he goes crazy. Bran thought of Joffrey's arrogant and cowardly appearance, and his heart, which had just settled down, was hanging again. Robb looked at him. Bran, are you a man? Bran glanced at his disabled legs. I am, but they all say I. Robb interrupted Bran. Listen, Bran. If you stay in your bedroom all your life, no one will say anything about you. But can you stay in bed all your life? Other people's opinions are not important, because their opinions will change with your performance. When you show cowardice, they will look down on you. If you are self-reliant, others will admire you instead. When I leave, only you and 4-year-old Rickon will be left in Winterfell. The Stark family will have a lot of support in the north, but there will also be evil-minded people who will take this opportunity to attack Winterfell and other lords who are trying their best to help us. I will leave some people for you, and Mr. Luwin will also help you. You must learn to lead them and defend Winterfell in times of danger. Bran listened to Robb's words and cheered up a little. I can do it. Robb carefully instructed, no matter what happens, you must stay indoors and wait for me to come back. I will, even if they laugh at me, I will protect our home. The next morning, Robb packed up everything, said goodbye to Bran, and prepared to leave Winterfell, and marched south with the army. Bran, who came to see him off, said worriedly, Rickon refused to come and say goodbye to you. He was worried that you would never come back like your father. Robb shook his head. I will come back, and then I can teach you the magic you have always wanted to learn. From what I have observed, you are very talented. Bran showed a happy expression. Really? Robb smiled and teased. Of course it is true. You are not as good as Arya in riding, archery and swordsmanship. There is not much point in being a knight. Why don't you learn some magic from me? Bran's face fell, but he felt an indescribable long-lost joy in his heart. He was always ridiculed by his brothers because he could not compare with Arya, but since he was pushed down from the tower by the Lannister family and his legs were disabled, his brothers and sisters never said that again. Maybe it was to take care of his emotions, but this kind of pity always makes people want to cry at night. On the contrary, Robb's current behavior made him angry and happy, which was really strange. Watching his brother Robb go away, Bran saw Grey Wind running beside his warhorse in a sturdy figure. At the front of the team, the grey and white flag of the Stark family was held high, and the flag fluttered in the wind. Theon Greyjoy and the Greydon walked on both sides of Robb. Since last night, the Greydon was willing to be Robb's guard. The remaining more than 3,000 knights followed closely into columns, and the steel spears gleamed in the sunlight. From this moment on, an elite force appeared on the King's Road. The King's Road is a public road that runs through the north and south of the Westeros continent. In the era of low productivity, a good road means that countless innocent souls are buried in it, so the entire Westeros continent has only the King's Road as a highway. The north is located in the northernmost part of the continent. Because of its extremely bitter and cold winter climate, it is difficult to attract outsiders. Therefore, although the north covers a huge area, almost 1/3 of the entire continent, the population is not that large. The huge area also caused Robb to walk a long way to King's Landing. Robb led the team to march slowly southward. At first, the road was easy to walk, but soon they entered the swampy area and the marching route slowed down. The soldiers were fine walking, but the logistics materials could not move quickly in these swamps. Carriages often got stuck in the mud, and it took several soldiers to lift the carriages out. In order to obtain more information, Robb sent out riders from the servant family as scouts, and sent more than 100 people out to collect intelligence along the way, absorb wandering knights who wanted to surrender, and contact people in the swamp. In this way, they marched forward and collected intelligence all the way. After several days, Robb led the army to the most important castle in the north, Kalen Bay. Robb ordered Theon on the side, "Pass my military order, the army will rest here, and let the leaders of each family come to the meeting at night." Kalen Bay is the strongest fortress in the north. This is not to say how magnificent it is, but it has a unique geographical advantage. To the north of the Bay of Kalen is Winterfell, which can be reached by following the King's Road, which is basically unobstructed, but to the south is a huge swamp. This swamp is extremely dangerous, with obstacles and bushes everywhere, countless poisonous insects and snakes, and muddy ground. Outsiders will get lost if they enter. It is basically impossible to send a large army to attack the Bay of Kalen from this rotten land. The castle in the swamp is called Greywater Watch, and its lord is Howland Reed, who is loyal to the north. He and Ned are also brothers who have been through life and death together. The residents living in Greywater Watch are the swamps that Mr. Lewin told Bran before. To the south of the swamp is the Riverlands, the territory of one of the other 7 dukes, a rich land. So as long as they guard the Bay of Kalen, the north will always be invincible. Before the meeting in the evening, a large number of scouts that were sent out a few days ago returned to the Bay of Kalen. Robb gained a lot of intelligence, but what they brought back was not good news. Ser Jaime of the Lannister family led his army to attack the Tully family's army in the Riverlands at the Golden Tooth, and the Riverland Lord Vance was killed in the battle. Chapter 6. Our army was defeated. The Tully family of the Riverlands, whose family emblem is a fish, is also known as the Fish family. Like the Stark family of the North, they are both ruling families with dukedoms, and are the objects of loyalty of most nobles in the Riverlands. Why did the Tully family fight with the Lannister family? Naturally, they responded to the call of the Stark family, and prepared to go to King's Landing to rescue Ned. The Tully family and the Stark family are in a marriage relationship. Robb's mother is the eldest daughter of Duke Tully. With family affection and political alliance, the interests of the two families have long been entangled. There are 7 dukes in Westeros today, and only Duke Tully is Robb's absolute ally. The Tully family's army was defeated by the Kingslayer Jaime, and an earl died, which put them in a critical juncture. This also made Robb very passive and his allies besieged. The next strategic choice is very important. If it is not done well, it will cause a chain reaction and lead to a complete collapse of morale. According to the intelligence of the spies, the morale of the army of Kingslayer Jaime was greatly boosted after the victory. They assembled the army of the Westerlands and set out from the Golden Tooth City, heading towards Riverrun, the base camp of the Tully family in the Riverlands. They encountered almost no resistance along the way. The army of the Riverlands fled when they saw the lion flag of the Lannister family, showing signs of defeat before the battle. The army rested, and the sky was dark. The lords of all sizes in the fortress of Moat Cailin also received the news. Their mood was as gloomy as the sky at this time. In the meeting room, Robb looked at the lords who had arrived, and was about to start the meeting when a hurried knock on the door came. Robb's men knew the rules very well. At this important time, no one would dare to knock on this door if there was no urgent matter. "Come in." Robb's voice was not loud, but very powerful. The people outside the door clearly heard the words of the commander-in-chief in the noisy environment. The door was almost knocked open. The first person to rush in was not a person, but a pungent smell of blood and stench. Then a soldier with dried blood all over his face and wounds all over his body, who had not yet been bandaged, rushed in. Robb took a long time to identify him before he recognized that he was one of the knights who followed his father to King's Landing. The first words he said made all the nobles present shudder. "Lord Robb, our army was defeated, and Lord Tywin is coming to kill us." Robb waved his hand to signal the other party to calm down, then walked in front of him. Before the other party could speak, he clenched his fist with one hand and bowed slightly. A golden rune appeared on the ground instantly. Golden light burst out from the rune on Robb's hand, covering the knight's body. The wounds on the knight's body immediately recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the eyes of everyone, he stood up, moved his limbs incredibly, and confirmed that he had recovered. He was shocked and didn't know what to say for a while. Resuming prayer, a miracle was performed with the help of the power of the Elden Ring. This, old gods, this is a miracle. The Greejan was the first to recover from the shock and shouted at the top of his voice. Is this magic? Or is it a miracle performed by the old gods? Robb Stark was also stunned. Robb waved his hand nonchalantly for all the lords to be quiet and then asked the bruised knight in a calm tone, "Tell all the lords here everything you know." Yes. Before Duke Ned was captured, he sent us to find Lord Tywin in the name of the king, asking him to return to King's Landing to explain the frame up of the Tully family. But when we arrived, the king had died suddenly. Tywin didn't recognize that we were following the king's orders and brought people to fight us. We were no match for Lord Tywin, and most of us were killed. I escaped by chance, and I was separated from the others. At this point, the knight was a little scared. I wanted to go back to King's Landing to find Lord Ned, but I heard that they imprisoned Lord Ned, and Lord Tywin also led countless troops to attack the Riverlands, burning, killing, and looting along the way. Several noble castles have been taken down by him. Now Lord Tywin is close to the King's Road, ready to occupy Harrenhal. Wow. The knight's words chilled the hearts of the lords present. Tywin's achievements were beyond everyone's imagination. The war had just begun, and before they made any moves, the other side had already gone crazy. Now Tywin, the old lion, was attacking along the King's Road, and his son Jaime led the army to hunt down the remnants from the west. The father and son of the Lannister family showed strong military capabilities at the beginning. Now the Lannister family has many options. Tywin can join forces with the Kingslayer to attack the Tully family's Riverrun. Once Riverrun falls, the Northern army will no longer have hope of going south. Tywin can also fight in a roundabout way and wait for Jaime to attack Riverrun. Anyway, they have the advantage. The people of Riverrun have long lost their will to fight. He only needs to surround the reinforcement and wander around the King's Road. As long as Robb makes a move, he can act immediately, putting the Northern army in a dilemma of being attacked from both sides. The current situation can be said to be very bad, and the Northern lords are beginning to have differences. Robb Stark was the first to offer his opinion. We should go to support them immediately. Jaime has captured another main force of the Tullys. If we keep wasting our time like this, our allies will be killed or maimed. As long as we can unite with the Tullys, we can catch the Kingslayer. No. Greejan objected loudly. We should go after that old Tywin first. The Kingslayer is just a young boy. You have no idea how sinister that old bastard Tywin is. We should attack Tywin by surprise. As long as we catch Tywin, we can win. Old Flade did not give a strategic plan, but only analyze the current situation. Grey Water Watch is helping us guard the swamp. Tywin can't hit us. I think he will most likely go back to find his son Jaime. Maybe we should stay in Moat Cailin and wait until the situation outside becomes clear before going out. Be a coward. You should be the one. And do we have enough food? The people below were arguing, but Robb just listened silently and did not rashly express his opinion. This is what a commander-in-chief should do. The rest of the lords were his vassals, not his friends. He could listen to their opinions, but he would never argue with them. He only needed to listen to all the information and then make a decision. The argument lasted for a long time, and everyone was a little tired of arguing. Then they realized that Robb, who was sitting at the top, had not spoken a word, but listened carefully to the argument of themselves and others. So the voices of the argument gradually decreased, and everyone looked at Robb. Unconsciously, everyone was expecting Robb to come up with an idea. There must be someone in charge. Master Robb, you should give us an idea. Old Rose Bolton spoke first. Chapter 7, A Strategy to Seek Death. Don't panic, uncles. Robb stroked Grey Wind's blown hair and smoothed it out one by one. The lords present also felt that their restless hearts were slowly calmed down by Robb's calm behavior. The initial anxiety when they heard that our army had lost and the enemy was strong was relieved a lot, and they even recovered some of their ability to think calmly. Seeing that everyone was calm, Robb slowly said, although the father and son of the Lannister family fought beautifully, they are not without weaknesses. I heard that my father exposed Joffrey in public, that he was the product of Jaime and Cersei's close relatives, so he was imprisoned by them. However, this news has spread throughout the continent. I conclude that King Robert's two brothers will not let Joffrey sit on the throne peacefully. The former King Robert Baratheon was also one of the 7 nobles in Westeros who could inherit the title of Duke, but in the war against the Mad King, Ned Stark pulled the Kingslayer Jaime off the Iron Throne and pushed Robert up. Therefore, the original title of the Baratheon family was held by Robert's younger brother. In addition, Robert also had a younger brother who assisted Robert in King's Landing. According to the law, if Joffrey loses his legal inheritance rights, these two people have the right to inherit the throne, and both of them are nominally Grand Dukes. One is the Duke of Storm's End of the Baratheon family, and the other is the Duke of Dragonstone ruled by the former Mad King Targaryen family. Both of them have soldiers and food, and the law is still on their side. They will fight for the throne anyway. Therefore, the Lannister family who supports King's Landing will soon face multi-line operations. Once the melee begins, they will definitely not be able to withstand the siege of the other 4 dukes. Time is not on their side. That's why they will attack the Tully family in the Riverlands with all their strength at the beginning of the war, and strive to quickly reduce the 4 dukes to 3 enemies. The lords present are all nobles. They are familiar with this information. They all nodded to agree with Robb's point of view, but they still look worried. The Lannister family is not doing well, and their side is not much better. Everyone's goal is King's Landing. Robert's 2 brothers will not regard themselves as allies, but only as secondary competitors. The fight for the throne has always been a winner takes all. Moreover, the current pressure from the Lannister family is still there, and the old Duke Ned must be rescued. Time will not stand on the side of the Stark family. Robb continued to stroke Grey Wind and told his strategic plan. I have decided that our main force will fight Tywin first, but we will not sneak attack them before Tywin reacts. We will cross the swamp and confront Tywin and trap Tywin to death in Harrenhal and not let him come out. Ah, Robb is crazy? Exclamation mark. This is the first thought that came to the minds of all the nobles present. This strategy is extremely absurd. Not to mention that your uncle's family is in danger to save your father, and they are waiting for you to rescue them, even if they have broken their throats. Even crossing the swamp and confronting Tywin is quite unreasonable. This is not only stupid, but also stupid. Why don't you use the huge geographical advantage of the swamp, but instead cross the swamp and block your retreat? Why not strike before the other side reacts? Tywin can completely clear out all the river nobles near the King's Road in a short time, and then hide in Harrenhal and face the North's army from afar. When the Kingslayer Jaime takes Riverrun and destroys the Tully family, the North's army will be in a dangerous situation of being attacked from all sides. Even if Robb goes crazy and thinks it through and turns to fight Jaime, Tywin can calmly come out of the castle and chase the North's ass. Either take down Jaime, or attack Tywin by surprise, or stay at Moat Cailin. These are 3 obvious strategies, but our young master Robb did not choose any of them. He chose to die. Rickard Karstark wailed, "We will lose the battle this way." Robos Bolton said nothing. He stared at Robb, wanting to see what the young wolf was up to, or was he just brave but reckless, a military idiot who loved to give blind orders? The small lords below were also discussing it. Some supported it unconditionally, some were very worried, and some strongly opposed it. Great John and Maggie from Bear Island were not abnormal at all. After hearing Robb's deployment, they directly threw away all the other messy thoughts in their minds, and were determined to firmly execute Robb's military orders. Even if they couldn't win, they would accept it. It was full of honor to die for a warrior like Robb. Robb glanced coldly at the reaction of the lords below. This matter has been decided, but we are not in a hurry to set off. The cavalry of the Manderley family and the people of the stream are coming. When the army is assembled, we will set out to attack Tywin. The lords saw that Robb was so sure that they knew there was no room for discussion on this matter, and could only accept this result. Robb showed his extraordinary skills in Winterfell and completely conquered several big lords. No one could oppose his decision. Robb called out to everyone again, "While we are waiting for the Manderley family, I hope you can train your soldiers well and prepare for the next fight. Yes, there is one more thing. I need to select a personal guard with about 300 people. This team must be all cavalry and well equipped. I hope to go to your camp tomorrow to select some warriors." The lords did not react to this request. Unlike the 500 soldiers that Robb and Earl Serwyn wanted, these cavalry were very loyal to the lords and would not borrow them and not return them. Especially the knights appointed by the lords themselves. They will only be responsible for the objects of their loyalty. In fact, many nobles are eager for such a good thing, because in this way, they can legitimately put their children next to Robb. Many nobles are waiting for this moment. Otherwise, why would Rickard Stark bring both of his sons? And why would Mickey Serwyn bring his daughter here? Now, if they don't think about fighting every day, they think about how to send their daughters who are almost 30 to Robb's bed. In addition, the commander must be protected by his personal guards. Otherwise, if the commander falls first, the situation will fall into defeat, which is something that no one wants to see. Rickard Stark changed his sad expression. "Lord Robb, you must choose my 2 sons. They are both excellent young men. My son Little John is better than your 2 sons combined." The lords discussed enthusiastically again. Everyone knew that Robb was the future Duke of Winterfell. At this time, they could cultivate feelings on the battlefield, and the descendants of their own family at least had a boss to support them. Chapter 8: The Birth of Wolf Riders. Training the guards is Robb's top priority now. Although the team that is about to be born has only 300 people, they are all carefully selected armored cavalry from various families. As long as the cavalry can show their momentum and break the opponent's mentality with a round of charge, these 300 people can chase and kill tens of thousands of ordinary infantry. Armored cavalry is the most unstoppable killing weapon in this era. Those who are shorter than the horse's neck are not allowed. Those who can't lift a stone are not allowed. Those who can't ride a horse around the Kalin Bay are not allowed. Those who are too old are not allowed. And those who are opportunistic are not allowed. Because in the process of advancing, nobles along the way have joined one after another. Robb's army has increased from 15,000 people at the beginning to 18,000. The number of cavalry is about 3,000. There is still a lot of room for selection, to choose 1 out of 10, so the requirements are also very high. However, the combat effectiveness of the soldiers in the north is generally higher than that of ordinary places. Even though Robb's requirements are so strict, in the end there are 294 cavalry who meet the requirements and are successfully selected. Big John's son Little John, including 2 sons of the Stark family and 1 son of the Serwyn family, were also selected. There is no shady deal here. Robb strictly selects all the guards according to the requirements, but the children of the nobles are born to eat and drink well, and their bodies are naturally much stronger than ordinary farm boys. In addition, most of their fathers have participated in the crusade against the Mad King, and they will start training their children from an early age. These requirements of Robb are all daily routines for them, and they can pass them easily. On the training ground, 294 cavalrymen stood neatly in a square formation. Most of them were strong young men in their 20s and 30s, holding a long spear in their hands. The tip of the spear emitted a cold light under the sunlight. The armor on their bodies was new and old, but they were all very solid. What can distinguish them from ordinary farm boys and craftsmen is their pairs of firm and sharp eyes. Those eyes are full of loyalty, honor, greed and ruthlessness. This is a very combat-capable team. Robb, wearing brown leather armor, rode his horse and inspected the front of the team. He nodded with satisfaction. This was the team he needed, but they were still missing something, and what he had to do was to fill it in for this team. Back then, Aegon, the ancestor of the Targaryen family, rode a 3-headed dragon from another continent to Westeros, swept across other countries on the continent, and finally completed the unification. In the process, 6 of the original 7 kingdoms either surrendered or were burned into barbecue by dragons. Robb paused when talking about the history of the continent of Westeros. However, only the southernmost kingdom of Dawn, their lords and their people did not act recklessly or surrender when facing powerful enemies. When the dragons came, they hid underground. When the dragons left, they took up weapons and fought under the leadership of their lords. In the end, they were the only kingdom that was not conquered by the Targaryen family. Instead, they were incorporated into the kingdom through a relatively equal way such as marriage and became dukedoms. They are a group of warriors, not for anything else, but because they have the courage to draw their swords when facing powerful enemies, and have absolute trust in their lords. I hope you can become such a warrior. As my personal guard, you must have extraordinary courage and complete trust in me. If you can do this, I, the son of the North, Robb Stark, swear here that I will never let you down, and you will get the rewards you deserve. At this time, Theon, the brother who was arranged by Robb in the personal guard, shouted loudly, "For the North, be loyal." Under the guidance of this, the rest of the personal guards were also infected by this atmosphere, and began to shout loyalty. At first, they were a little scattered, but then gradually integrated together, to form a unique momentum. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. The soldiers shouted 3 times, each louder and more orderly than the last, and the last one resounded through the world, and the whole Kalen Bay could clearly hear the soldiers' shouts. Of course, this was just a temporary atmosphere infection. Everyone was a little bit excited for a while. If most people here really offered loyalty, I'm afraid that the dogs on the side of the road would stick their butts up and shit to show that they couldn't. Robb waved his hand, signaling his men to take out a bag. Hearing the crackling sound of metal colliding inside, some knights who lived in poverty instantly widened their eyes. They would definitely not have heard this sound wrong. Golden dragons. A large bag of golden dragons. Robb stretched out his hand and grabbed a dozen golden dragons in the bag. Many golden dragons fell back into the bag through the gaps between Robb's fingers, making the most pleasant sound in the world. Galeed. Many cavalrymen swallowed their saliva. Just a handful of gold in Robb's hand was enough for a soldier to buy a good horse, ask a blacksmith to make a top-notch armor, find the most expensive girl, and have no worries about food and drink for the rest of his life. Money can move people's hearts. This is really true. Seeing the expressions of the crowd, Robb smiled and said, "Yes, it's just what you think. The money in this bag is all yours." The soldiers in the audience stagnated, their breathing and their heartbeats accelerated. Was this lord too generous? How long would it take to spend so much money? But Robb loosened his hand and threw all the gold dragons in his hand back into the bag. "If you want to get this money, you have to pay a price. As I said just now, you have to trust me and obey me completely in the next recruit training." "Sir, do you mean to ask us to sell our lives to you for this little money?" a knight said boldly. "Of course not." Robb shook his head. "This money is your reward. If you take a gold dragon from me, you have to work for me for a month. During this month, my military orders are everything. If you violate the rules, I will chop off your heads. Of course, after the end of this month, if you still want to take the gold dragons, you can stay. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. My words are very clear. If you don't want to, and want to leave now, there are silver deer in the other bag. You can take one and leave." Hearing Robb say this, many cavalrymen felt a little relieved. Those who betrayed Master Robb were given a silver deer. If they followed him, how could they be wronged? When Robb was still in Winterfell, he formulated a series of military laws and set up a military law team to supervise their implementation. Maggie and Robb chopped off many people's heads according to the law, but everyone was convinced, because Robb and his military law team always adhered to the 4 words, impartiality. Everyone saw what the Lord did, and everyone had a public opinion in their hearts about what kind of Lord Robb was. They believed that Robb was a person worth following. Other wandering knights actually didn't care about Robb's character. They only cared about money, and came to the war for money. Now the war hasn't started yet, and the golden dragon has been obtained. This lord is very generous. Other noble children don't care about money, or whether Robb is fair. What they need is Robb's friendship. No one wants to quit. In the end, only 4 people with concerns walked away in disgrace with the silver deer in the eyes of everyone's contempt. The remaining 290 people chose to stay and stay with Robb. Robb looked at these people with a feeling of deep emotion, so he grabbed a handful of golden dragons from his bag and threw them into the sky, letting the golden rain fall on every soldier. From today on, you will be called Wolf Riders. Chapter 9. Listen to my whistle. The first training of the Wolf Riders was actually very simple, which was archery. Most of them were elite soldiers who had undergone rigorous training. They were not proficient in riding and swordsmanship, but at least they were proficient. It was very difficult to improve the ability of individual combat through training. This was the so-called marginal effect. Therefore, Robb paid more attention to the military tactical training of these wolf riders. With a large number of people, the tactical advantage can be reflected. As long as they are trained properly, these less than 300 wolf riders can even kill 300 magic mountains. And no matter how much they train their personal abilities, they can't survive 5 rounds from the magic mountain in a one-on-one battle. This is the charm of tactics. Today is the first day, and Robb is going to give this team what it lacks through training: absolute obedience to military orders. Leading the soldiers to the jungle near the Kalin Bay, Robb raised the bow and arrow in his hand and shouted to the soldiers, "Obeying orders is a duty of the soldiers. Now I will announce the first military order of the wolf cavalry. See the whistle arrow in my hand? This is my special arrow. When it is fired, it will also produce a whistle-like sound. So from now on, when my whistle arrow is fired, the arrows in your hands must be shot out together with my whistle arrow. No matter who the target is, no matter when, anyone who violates this order will be sentenced to death," Robb said, seeing that some wolf cavalry were still a little at a loss, so he pulled the bow full moon on the spot and prepared to demonstrate to these wolf cavalry on the spot. Whoosh, beep, the whistle arrow was shot out, and the sharp whistle sound echoed in the woods. The wolf cavalry trembled in their hearts, and they immediately picked up the bow and arrow in a hurry and fired arrows in the direction of Robb's whistle arrow. Although they didn't understand what this meant, they just had to do it. "Very good, none of you have fallen behind." Robb nodded with satisfaction. "It seems that you have fully understood the meaning of what I just said. I hope you can remember this firmly, because it will be related to your lives." The wolf riders who were praised also had some proud expressions on their faces. Then Robb led his men to wander back and forth in the woods. When he saw the prey, he would shoot a whistle arrow, and then hundreds of arrows would follow behind him. Few prey could escape such a dense rain of arrows. Once the prey died, Grey Wind, the huge dire wolf, immediately rushed out, brought the prey back, and put it under Robb's horse to ask for credit. "Well done, well done." Robb was in a good mood and praised repeatedly. "You have engraved your own labels on the arrows. After we kill the prey today, I will collect all the arrows on the prey. Whoever shoots the most prey will get a gold dragon. Long live Stark. Long live Robb." The wolf riders didn't expect their boss to be so generous. Today, these waves of money offensives are almost throwing them into the money eyes and they can't climb out again. This money is really easy to make. All the wolf riders were secretly happy. The hunting activity soon came to an end. Seeing that the sky was about to get dark, Robb was also ready to take his wolf riders back to Kalin Bay. At night, Robb kept his promise during the day and called the wolf rider who shot the most prey to his side. In front of everyone, he gave him a gold dragon. The wolf rider's hands were shaking with excitement. This gold dragon could replace his armor with a brand new one. The reward was over, and the first day of training was spent without any danger, and even in a stable and peaceful atmosphere. Everyone had a good sleep, looking forward to such a competition the next day, imagining how they would be free and happy after winning a gold dragon. The next morning, Robb lived up to everyone's expectations and took Grey Wind and the wolf riders to the forest of Kalin Bay to continue hunting. However, the cooperation today was obviously much better. As soon as Robb's arrow left the string, countless arrows followed behind him. The reaction of the wolf riders was many times faster than yesterday. Robb was very satisfied with the performance of the wolf riders. "Very good, it's time to give them some small tests." When Grey Wind brought another fawn, Robb did not ride on the horse, but dismounted with a bow and arrow to check the prey, and then suddenly took the bow, aimed at the horse he had just ridden, and shot the whistle arrow. Whoosh, whoosh whoosh. Most of the wolf riders shot the arrows in their hands at Robb's horse without hesitation, and the poor horse was instantly pierced into a hedgehog. However, 3 wolf riders reacted half a beat slower. They were a little confused. Isn't this Lord Robb's mount? Are they really going to shoot it to death? When they reacted and were ready to draw their bows and shoot arrows, they found that everyone's eyes were on them. The wolf riders around them all moved away from them tacitly, surrounding the 3 of them. The 3 were instantly frightened. They looked around for Robb's figure and explained in panic, "My lord, I didn't mean it." Robb didn't say anything and walked straight to the 3 of them. Robb had a blank expression on his face. "You are the soldiers who made a mistake for the first time, so I will give you a special treatment. Thank you for your kindness." No, 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 you misunderstood. This is not a pardon for your death penalty. I will give you 3 chances to duel. You 3 can come together. As long as you can kill me, I will pardon you. Robb's arrogant words shocked everyone present. Theon was the first to stand up and object. Robb, you can't do this. Shut up. Robb interrupted Theon and said to him in a cold tone, you are a wolf rider now. Remember your identity and don't do anything that is beyond your authority. I won't remind you a second time. Theon was frightened by Robb's cold eyes and remained silent. Seeing this, the other wolf riders did not dare to say anything. The 3 wolf riders looked at each other, knowing that they had no way to survive and could only fight. Although attacking nobles is also a capital crime in Westeros, it is also a capital crime not to do it now. It's death anyway, so it's better to die like a warrior. Moreover, there are 3 cavalrymen on my side, and the other side has dismounted, so the chances of winning are quite high. How can infantry fight cavalry? The advantage is mine. The duel began, and the rest of the wolf cavalry separated the space to allow these 4 people to duel openly. The 3 wolf cavalrymen prepared their postures, picked up their spears, and then clamped them under their arms, charging at Robb Stark not far away, demanding the last chance of life from the man who wanted to take their lives. The war horses stepped together. The sound was like thunder, but Robb standing in front of the 3 people did not move at all, as if waiting to die there, letting the spear pierce his body. The rest of the wolf cavalrymen saw this and felt nervous, fearing that Robb would have an accident. When the war horses were only 5 meters away from Robb suddenly moved. He jumped high, and suddenly a red thunder light emanated from his body. The twisted red lightning wandered over Robb's body and gathered towards his hands. The lightning surged, the thunder shot out, and gradually gathered into a red thunder longsword. Lance Shanks's blade, the prayer that displays the power of the ancient dragon. Lance Shanks can summon the red thunder blade, which sweeps across the air and releases lightning when it strikes. Looking at the 3 wolf riders who were so close, with expressions of horror and fear on their faces, Robb chopped down the red thunder blade in his hand without hesitation. Chapter 10. Old Skinning and Arrow Catching. After killing 3 wolf riders who violated military orders in a nearly miraculous way, the rest of the wolf riders were completely shocked and confused. They didn't understand what kind of power Master Robb showed. Then they fell into a frenzy and began to worship Robb. Since ancient times, humans have always had feelings of worship and fear for mysterious and powerful beings. In ancient times, the elves and ancestors of Westeros began to believe in the old gods in fear. Especially after watching Robb summon a long sword composed of red thunder out of thin air, their worship of Robb almost reached the point of worshipping gods. Some people have already determined in their hearts that Robb must be the incarnation of gods walking on the earth. Otherwise there is no way to explain all this. They took the lead in getting off their horses, kneeling on the ground in Robb's direction, and silently reciting the most commonly used prayers. God, please give me guidance. Robb stood in the middle of the crowd to accept worship, but he didn't think it was a big deal. When he took over the Golden Law and became the King of Elden, he had already seen such scenes. At present, these can only be regarded as small scenes. Robb gathered the bodies that had been split in half together and said, bury them and erect a monument. Even if they violated military orders, they are still members of the Wolf Riders. That night, all the lords of the Kalen Bay knew about Robb's miracles in the woods. This was not the first time that Robb had shown his divine power. All the lords saw it when he rescued the wounded before. They were more and more in awe of Robb. Since Winterfell, Robb has constantly shocked them. Now Robb is just a fog to them. The lords' actions became more and more respectful and disciplined. In the next few days, Robb still trained his wolf riders in the jungle. This time, in addition to training obedience, Robb also studied a set of small flag terms to cooperate with team tactics. There are 3 colors of flags. Each color of flag waved in different directions represents different military orders, including retreat, attack, encirclement, etc. Because the battlefield is noisy, and sometimes due to various force majeure factors, the soldiers' battle lines are stretched very long, so it is impossible to command the army by sound alone, unless your voice is louder than thunder. Robb does have a high volume spell like Mountain Troll Roar to use, but it can only emit one volume and cannot convey various battlefield information. After thinking about it, the time-tested method of battle flag terminology is the best. During training, Robb did not forget his money ability. As long as the team members performed well in training, they would be rewarded. Under the atmosphere of high pressure, high bounty and honor of fighting for the Lord, the hearts of these wolf cavalrymen were gradually won over by Robb. The lords who were still looking at the map in the castle and preparing for the next battle never thought that in just a few days, the cavalry they sent out would be completely controlled by Robb. After Robb's strict training, the current wolf cavalrymen are no longer the same level of team as 4 days ago. Their individual combat capabilities have not improved much, but the entire wolf cavalry team can obey orders and their eyes are full of desire and killing. It is no exaggeration to say that, if we could travel through time and space and let the current team fight against the wolf riders from a few days ago, although it would be impossible to completely wipe them out, they would definitely be able to crush the opponent. The sun sets, and the afterglow of the sunset indicates that today's time has passed. Robb looked at this group of brand new wolf riders and said with satisfaction, "Very good, you have completed my initial training. I'm very happy to have so many soldiers by my side. Tomorrow we will rush to the battlefield and let the enemy tremble under our hooves." The wolf riders shouted in unison, "We will win." After shouting, everyone fell into solemnity. No one whispered to each other and said a word of nonsense. They all looked at their commander with firm eyes. "Very good, let's go back to the castle." Oh. Robb's whistle arrows shot directly at Grey Wind. After several days of training, all the wolf riders behind him instinctively picked up their bows and arrows to shoot, but some still hesitated and did not shoot their arrows immediately. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 276 arrows hit Grey Wind accurately, but Grey Wind did not make any sound. The arrows went straight through Grey Wind's body and stuck straight into the ground. Grey Wind's figure was like a reflection in the water, which fluctuated a few times before returning to normal. Enemy luring phantom, creating an illusory figure to confuse the enemy. This Grey Wind was just an illusion created by Robb out of thin air. The 11 wolf riders who did not shoot arrows behaved completely differently from the previous 3. They took off their armor on their own, jumped off their horses, and walked towards Robb with swords in hand. There was no regret on their faces, only the determination to die calmly. After these days of training, they have already agreed with the wolf rider culture established by Robb. With generous rewards and honors, they naturally have the awareness of dying. They half knelt before Robb, raised their swords above their heads, and asked their captain to kill them. "Write your will, and I will give your due reward to the person you think is most important." Robb felt a little soft-hearted. Humans are not plants or trees. Who can be heartless? Robb had memorized the names of these 11 wolf riders, understood their families, and knew their preferences during these days of getting along with them. They are living people, not cold numbers on the battlefield. But military law cannot be based on human feelings, because as long as human feelings are used, more people will die. Robb took the sharp blade they handed over. 276 wolf riders, carrying 11 complete corpses, returned to the castle gate in a solemn atmosphere. Just now was the final test given to them by Robb. Now Robb believed that the combat power of this wolf rider would definitely exceed everyone's imagination. When the last bit of sunset light was left, Robb's team could finally see the gate of Moat Cailin. At the castle gate, Gretchen and Old Skinner were riding their horses to leave the city and head for the jungle of Moat Cailin. It seemed that they had some important intelligence to report to Robb. This is a great time for the wolf riders to make their debut. Robb looked at the 2 figures, smiled slightly, asked the wolf riders to wait here, and went to meet the 2. When approaching old Robbo's Bolton, Robb did not hesitate, put an arrow directly on the old face of the guy. Then Robbo's Bolton saw the most unforgettable scene in his life. A total of 276 arrows flew towards him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 11 Jokes and Warnings. Golden Block. While praying to the golden tree, the enemy's attack is deflected and unbalanced. It can also be effective when there is some distance from the enemy. A golden inscription appeared in the air, and the illusory runes gathered into a circle. Inside the circle, there were patterns drawn by countless golden lines. The most eye-catching thing was the intertwined curved arcs in the center of the circle. That was a symbol of the perfect golden law. The moment this illusory symbol appeared, the Great John and the old-skinned Rose Bolton, who were closest to Robb, instantly had the urge to kneel down and worship. Fortunately, this illusory pattern only appeared for a moment, and immediately burst out a shockwave, and dissipated in the air. The two of them resisted the urge to kneel down, and repent in tears. The golden block combat skill bounced all the arrows shot at Rose Bolton. The uncontrolled arrows flew everywhere and fiercely stuck under the feet of Rose Bolton's horse. The frightened horse just raised its front hoof and almost flipped the old skin to the ground. After finally controlling the horse, Old Skinner looked at Robb angrily, wanting to ask what he meant, but the words were stuck in his throat, unable to speak. He was terrified, scared, and confused. He had just seen clearly that there were knights from his family in the team, but why in just a few days, those knights could ignore their previous loyalty and affection and shoot arrows at him without hesitation? What did Robb do? Did he control these people with magic? Exclamation mark. Robb still had a familiar smile. Ha ha ha, sorry, Lord Rose Bolton, I'm just joking with you, I guess you don't mind. Everyone knew that this was not a joke, but a warning. Robb was warning Rose Bolton about his recent repeated attempts on him. Rose Bolton was very angry, and wanted to find two people to skin him to vent his anger, but he looked at the solemn wolf riders, and forced a smile. Of course, it's a very interesting joke. Gretchen gloated. Ha ha ha, Master Robb is really amazing. In such a short time, these wolf cubs are already very different from before. Robb was a little modest. Thank you for the compliment. I just did some insignificant work. Are you coming to the forest to find me? What happened? Gretchen restrained the smile on his face. The team of the Manderley family has arrived. They also escorted your mother to the Kalen Bay. Robb's heart moved, and another powerful helper came. Take me there quickly. The group came to the meeting room of Kalen Bay, which was already full of lords of all sizes. Among these people, Catelyn Stark kept looking at the door while talking, hoping to see the familiar figure as soon as possible. Finally, when Robb appeared at the door, Catelyn stood up excitedly. As a mother, a woman whose husband was captured, Catelyn had a kind of dependence on Robb, because he was the eldest man in the family, but also a kind of worry. After all, Robb was just a child. How she wanted to run over, kiss her son's eyebrows and nose, and take a good look at what her child, whom she hadn't seen for almost a year, had grown up. She couldn't wait to talk to her son, to tell him about her own experience, to care about her son's first battle with the army, and she had a lot to say. But as soon as she took a step, her footsteps stopped. Catelyn was born in a noble family, and now she was the wife of the Lord of the North. She had participated in countless political banquets, and was very sensitive to the atmosphere. She found that, when her son stepped into this meeting room, all the lords' faces became serious. They were no longer relaxed, as if they were intimidated by some kind of power. They became careful and cautious, as if they were afraid that they had done something wrong. Gretchen and Rose Bolton, who walked in with Robb, looked like guards. They personally opened the door of the room for Robb, and pulled out a chair, as if serving a king. Am I seeing this correctly? Exclamation mark. Even if Ned were here, these lords would not have such expressions. Catelyn's face was full of astonishment. She couldn't believe that her son had grown to this point. It was foreseeable that he would become a better northern lord than Ned. After calming down a little, Catelyn apologized to the lords and said, "My lords, I'm quite tired after a long journey. I just want to talk to my son alone. I believe you will understand." All the lords stood up together. Catelyn had an inexplicable feeling that these people did not seem to leave because of her words, but because of her son Robb, who was sitting next to her. There was ale and cheese on the table. Catelyn poured a corner cup, sat down, took a sip, and looked at her son carefully. He seemed to be taller and more majestic than when she left. "I really don't know how this little guy dealt with those lords. You have grown a beard." Edgemure started growing a beard when he was 16. When Robb saw his mother, the closeness brought by the blood made him very gentle, and he rarely said a witty remark. "These beards are in the way. I think I will look more handsome if I shave them off." Catelyn was amused. You don't seem to be worried about me asking you to go back to Winterfell. Just like sending a crying little baby back to bed. You know, you were still using a wooden sword when you practiced sword a year ago. Robb shrugged. You saw the performance of those lords. I bet if you proposed to send me back to Winterfell, they would send you back immediately. Catelyn was not angry when she heard this, but very relieved. You really grew up. I can't believe how you subdued those bastards. My last name is Stark. That's enough. Catelyn wanted to reach out and touch her son's hair, but after thinking about it, she retracted her hand. Robb asked her, you know about your father, right? This is what Catelyn fears the most. She tried her best not to let others discover her fear. I know. The Manderley family told me when I landed at White Harbor. Catelyn was preparing to return to Winterfell from King's Landing to see the children very early, but halfway through she found a dwarf, the little devil of the Lannister family, drinking on the side of the road. She always thought that the little devil wanted to kill her son Bran, so she directly asked someone to capture the little devil. Then she came to her sister's territory, ready to let her sister kill the little devil to vent her anger, but she didn't expect the little devil to run away. A few days later, she heard the news of the great changes in the capital, so she hurried back to the north to discuss countermeasures with her son. Catelyn said a little disappointedly, my sister is unwilling to send the Knights of the Arin Valley, so we can't get the help of the Eagle family. In addition to my trumpet, the first member of the book friend list to this book was born. Thanks to, for the monthly ticket. Chapter 12 Please help me get married. Robb chuckled and said, it seems that Aunt Lyssa dotes on my Uncle Robb and Arin. Catelyn didn't expect her son to have the heart to make such a joke. Be serious, she is your aunt after all. Although she didn't come, Uncle Blackfish came with me. What the two said was related to the marriage relationship between nobles. During the reign of the Mad King, the lord and heir of the Stark family once went to King's Landing to ask for an explanation, but they were killed by the Mad King. With the sudden death of the lord and the eldest son, the second son Ned Stark took over the title of Duke of the North. The rebellion war broke out. At that time, the lord of the Eagle family in the Arin Valley adopted Ned. The lord of the Eagle family was Jon Arryn, the former hand of the king who died suddenly. It can be said that Jon Arryn is Ned's adoptive father, but the Duke married Lyssa Tully, the sister of Ned's wife Catelyn, that is, Robb's aunt. So now Robin Arryn, the Lord of the Vale of Arryn, is both an uncle and a cousin to Robb, and the relationship is very complicated. Robb stopped joking with his mother and started to talk business. I have been prepared for Aunt Lyssa not to come. You have a bad relationship with her. Catelyn was hurt by her sister. I didn't expect her to be so heartless. After all, Ned is her family. Robb comforted her. It doesn't matter. It's enough that Grandpa and Uncle's family are willing to help us. Then Robb told his mother all about the recent war situation. Catelyn is not clear about the Tully family's battle situation, so when she heard her son say that the Tully family was beaten back, her face turned pale, not to mention the sad news that Tywin led his army to kill people in the Riverlands. She asked with a trembling voice, what are you going to do? Robb looked into his mother's eyes and said, I told my men that we will gather all our forces to confront Tywin's army and prepare for a decisive battle on the King's Road. What about your grandfather and Uncle Edgemere? For the first time, Robb told others his true intentions. This is another plan. I haven't told anyone. Everyone will think we are going to have a decisive battle with Tywin, but I will take 300 cavalrymen to Reveron for support. I want to capture the Kingslayer. Robb took out a map and said to Catelyn, after we cross the swamp, the army will continue to confront Tywin along the King's Road. I will cross the Green Fork River to support Reveron. 300 cavalrymen? Catelyn was a little stunned. How can you beat the Kingslayer Jaime with only 300 cavalrymen? He is a knight who has experienced hundreds of battles. Robb's face was firm. How do you know you can win if you don't fight? And this is my military order, and I will not change my mind. Seeing Robb's stiff tone and confident expression, Catelyn could understand why those lords were so respectful to her son. Unconsciously, she saw that her son had become a tough man. Catelyn continued to ask, if you leave the army, who will lead the main force? Tywin is not a kitten. He is an old and cunning lion. He has more soldiers than you, and far more cavalry. Your main force is at risk of being eaten at any time. Robb patiently answered, the only choice is Old Flayed. I don't like that guy, but Gretchen and Rickard Karstark are too reckless. I need someone to hold Tywin back, not an idiot who would risk a decisive battle with Tywin. But I also plan to let Mitch Seven be the deputy commander. Although he does not have much military talent, he is equally cautious. He will not adopt radical tactics in conflict with Old Flayed. The key is that he can help me monitor Old Flayed. In fact, Catelyn knows these lords very well, and her ideal candidate is also Rose Bolton. She is very happy that her son is not only tough, but also has the ability to recognize and use people. Catelyn looked at the map and immediately saw a key that would hinder Robb's plan. There is another problem now. If you want to cross the Green Fork, you must go through the only ferry, Riverrun. That is the territory of Lord Free, the late Lord Free. Although this man swore allegiance to your grandfather never trusted him. Neither of them discussed the matter of taking Riverrun, because this castle is easy to defend and difficult to attack, and Riverrun is in a critical situation. There is no time to waste on this hardbone. Catelyn thought for a while. Let me go and talk to him. No matter what the conditions are, we can talk to him. Robb smiled. No, when I meet this Lord Free, I will give him a condition that he cannot refuse. You should go. In Robb's view, Catelyn's political negotiation ability is actually very remarkable, so it is a waste of talent to let her talk to a mere Lord Free, so he said the idea he had planned long ago. Catelyn misunderstood and thought Robb was going to send her back to Winterfell. I'm not going back to Winterfell, she heard herself say, and was surprised to find that the tears that suddenly welled up had blurred her vision. Your grandfather is lying in Riverrun, dying, and your uncle is surrounded by enemies. Robb quickly took out his handkerchief to wipe his mother's tears. Of course not. I have an important matter for you to do. I need you to go to the Rose family in Highgarden and negotiate with them. Highgarden? Catelyn was a little confused. Although the Stark family and the Tyrell family belong to the same dukedom, they have little intersection. Robb said calmly, I heard that the Roses of Highgarden are getting married. I think we should have an alliance to enhance the relationship between the two sides. We don't have a deep relationship with Highgarden. This matter. Robb spread his hand slightly. The Tyrell family owns the rich Highgarden. It just so happens that our team's food is almost gone. Marrying with their family can greatly alleviate our food problem. I also heard that they are interested in marrying King Robert's third brother. As long as they are not supporting the Lannister family, we can win them over. But King Robert's third brother likes men. I think their marriage will definitely not succeed. I know our family is not familiar with them, so I need you, mother, to go there in person. When you arrive, I will also fight a perfect battle to enhance my prestige. The Tyrell family has no ambition to dominate the continent. They only want their daughter to become the queen. When they see that we have the hope of replacing Joffrey, they will naturally agree to our marriage. Robb said a lot, and Catelyn felt that her son made some sense. It was certainly a good thing to have an extra ally at this time, so she agreed. The two problems Robb wanted to solve at the beginning were the obedience of the Northern Lords and the food and fodder needed for the army. Now that the first problem has been solved, the second problem can be solved by marrying the Tyrells. Of course, as Robb said, only if the Tyrells can see the Starks win and keep winning until they ascend the Iron Throne will they bet on Robb. Then the next battle to support Riverrun is crucial. Chapter 13, Deployment of Troops. The next morning, Catelyn Stark and Robb said goodbye at the Moat Cailin. The mother and son, who had just met for one night, were about to say goodbye. Before leaving, Catelyn looked at her son, her heart full of pride. I never thought you would take the initiative to propose a marriage. Little boys may be able to wield swords, but only real adult lords can understand the meaning of a political marriage and accept it calmly. Robb smiled and said, I heard that the little Rose of the Tyrell family is extremely beautiful, so I'm not at a disadvantage. Catelyn was still a little worried. Lord Free over at the Lewin River City is not an easy character to get along with. I'm worried that he may not let you cross the river. It doesn't matter, I will take care of this matter. Looking at Robb's confident look, Catelyn didn't say much, got on the horse, and left the Moat Cailin with several guard knights. Robb was worried about his mother's safety, so he asked the two children of the Manderley family to escort their mother. After all, there were bandits everywhere outside, and necessary security measures must be taken. Robb looked back at the moat Kaelin, where all the lords were ready to cross the swamp to find Tywin's army for a decisive battle. Robb looked at an older knight and said politely, "Sir Blackfish, you are most familiar with the situation in the Riverlands. Please take care of the rest of the way." Sir Blackfish's original name was Brynden Tully, the younger brother of the current Lord of the Riverlands. Because he did not want to accept the marriage arranged by his brother, he separated from the Tully family and had his own Blackfish banner, so Robb called him Sir Blackfish. He originally followed Lyssa to the Vale of Rhyn to serve, but after hearing about the tragic situation in the Riverlands, he resolutely followed his niece Catelyn to the battlefield. So it cannot be said that the Vale of Rhyn did not participate in the war at all. At least one knight came. In terms of seniority, Sir Blackfish is Robb's second grandfather, but on the battlefield Robb is the commander-in-chief, so although Robb showed rare politeness, that's all. Although Sir Blackfish was older, his eyes still revealed vitality. "Leave it to me." Leaving 1,000 archers stationed at the moat of Kaelin, Robb's army marched south along the King's Road. When passing through the Swamp Lord sent scouts to help Robb's army lead the way, and they had no danger along the way. After crossing the swamp, they entered the Riverlands. Sir Blackfish carefully selected 100 men and 100 good horses to gather information everywhere in the dangerous Riverlands. This second grandfather was very capable, and new news was delivered every day. Although most of them were not good news, it was much better than being in the dark. But when Sir Blackfish placed a copy of the latest battle report on the tables of the lords, everyone fell silent. Jaime the Kingslayer led his troops to besiege Riverrun, and Edgemere Tully led his defeated troops to fight Jaime to the death outside Riverrun, but he and a group of knights were captured alive by Jaime. Lord Blackwood, who escaped by chance, was trapped in Riverrun with the remaining troops. Although Sir Blackfish reported the battle situation expressionlessly, he was already extremely anxious in his heart. That was his own nephew. After the defeat of Sir Edgemere Tully, most of the lords in the Riverlands scattered and fled back to their respective castles, only to be defeated one by the army, led by Lord Tywin. Direnhill was surrendered, and Raventree, which was without Earl Blackwood, fell immediately. The lords under Lord Tywin burned, killed, and looted in the Riverlands. Several territories have been burned to ashes. In the Riverlands, except for Riverrun and Lord Freeze Riverrun, only the Lannisters still have Seaforth, but they don't have many people, and can hardly play any role. When the Gregian heard the battle reports, he was so angry that his beard was about to fly. They were defeated by the Lannisters so quickly. There were tens of thousands of people. Even killing tens of thousands of pigs would not be so fast. Roose Bolton observed the situation as keenly as ever. On this battlefield in the Riverlands, the Lannisters have already won. If we don't attack immediately, the Riverlands will be completely lost within 10 days. Rickard Karstark roared, "Fight them now. Otherwise, these guys will think we are just for nothing." Robb looked at the performance of the nobles he relied on, and sighed that, although Gregian and Rickard Karstark were brave, the shrewd and calculating old Flade was still the most stable. No wonder he was able to kill the Stark family and become the new Guardian of the North in the original timeline. Having made up his mind, Robb began to make his own tactical arrangements. "Sir Blackfish, pay attention to the ravens in the sky. If any raven dares to fly up, shoot it down. I don't want our every move in the Riverlands to be under the surveillance of the enemy." Sir Blackfish said respectfully, "I have arranged it. If you want, I can make a hat for you with the feathers of the ravens that were shot down." Robb was very satisfied with Sir Blackfish's performance. "Look, see, this is called professionalism." Roose Bolton also glanced at Sir Blackfish. Although he had heard that this knight's ability far exceeded his nephew Sir Edgemere, it now seemed that his ability was even better than the rumors. "You all know the current situation. The Green Fork River flows down from north to south, dividing our battlefield into two parts. One is Riverrun in the west, and the other is the King's Road in the east. I told you before that I would concentrate the main force in the east and fight a decisive battle with Lord Tywin's army." The lords of the north thought that Robb had changed his mind, but they didn't expect Robb's next words to make them wonder if their ears were broken. Robb's finger slid across the map and finally stopped at Riverrun. My plan is the same as before, but there is one more thing I need to tell you. I will personally lead the Wolf Riders to support Riverrun, and you will lead the soldiers to hold Tywin on the King's Road. The expressions on the faces of the lords changed drastically. They did not expect that their boss's madness not only did not get better, but became even more serious. Before Edgemuir was captured by the Kingslayer Jaime, they believed that the army of the North and the army of the Riverlands would be able to capture Jaime only if they joined together. Now that Edgemuir has been captured, the combat power of the Riverlands has been greatly weakened. Even if the army of the North joins, there is only a 60% chance of winning. But Robb only wants to go with 300 cavalry to support. What's the difference between this and sending yourself to die? But when they thought of all the incredible things Robb had shown recently, they felt a faint flame in their hearts. Maybe Lord Robb still has a backup plan? This book was recommended in the last round in the early morning. Thank you for your support. It's a bit exciting for the newcomer for the first time. Finally, I would like to ask for some follow-up reading data to see the latest updated chapters, which is quite important for a new book. Thank you. PS. Thanks to A-tui Debugging for the monthly ticket. Chapter 14. The troops approach Luan City. During my absence, Lord Robb Bolton will temporarily take over the command of the army, assisted by Lord Mage Severn, and Lord Mage Mormont will continue to be in charge of military law supervision within the army. Previously, Robb had made personnel adjustments and arrangements for the main force, which made Gretchen and Rickard Karstark very angry. In their opinion, their abilities were not absolutely recognized by Robb, but they did not refute Robb in public. They already knew how to maintain the authority of the Lord in front of outsiders. So after the meeting, the two found Robb privately. Gretchen panted, "I don't understand, my lord. Robb Bolton is a conspirator. How can you hand over the army to him?" Rickard Karstark did not speak, but from his expression, it can be seen that he agreed with Gretchen's opinion. Robb poured a glass of ale for the two of them. "What do you think of Countess Mage?" Gretchen answered without hesitation. "Loyal, bad-tempered, a little stubborn and willful." "Then do you think she is competent as the captain of the military law team?" Gretchen hesitated, but still said honestly, "Of course. Her personality is most suitable for doing such offensive things." Robb took a sip of ale. "What if I promote her to commander-in-chief? Do you think she can do this job well?" Gretchen and Rickard Karstark both remained silent. They were smart people and had understood the hidden meaning in Robb's words. After a while, Rickard Karstark said angrily, "I know we are not suitable, but we can't let that pervert who likes to skin people be the commander-in-chief. He is a complete conspirator. As far as I know, he has left a lot of cavalry in his dread fort. I'm afraid he has evil intentions." Robb comforted him. "The water of the Green Fork is clear, and the water of the swamp is rotten, but both water sources have their own uses. The Green Fork irrigates the soil, and the swamp blocks the enemy. Can I only prefer the Green Fork and hate the swamp? If the Green Fork overflows, I will try my best to repair it. If the swamp becomes more rotten and affects the living of the people, I will also lead people to manage it. Although the two are good and bad, in my eyes there is no good or bad, only whether the two can be used properly. In the distant kingdom of wisdom, there is a saying that I like very much. This saying is, clouds hover in the sky, and water rests at the bottom of the bottle. Each of you has your own position. If you are a cloud, I will let you be in the sky, and if you are water, I will let you be at the bottom of the bottle." Great John and Rickard Karstark were stunned and didn't know what to say for a while. A large part of the reason was that they didn't understand what their lord was saying at all, but they could still understand the meaning. "Robb Bolton is more suitable for this position than you, but I trust you more, and you will have a chance to show your abilities in the future. As for asking them to learn about those metaphors and proverbs from distant countries in detail, it would be better to kill them directly." This half-understanding confusion made the two feel that Robb seemed to be smarter than them, and much smarter. If ordinary lords dared to quibble with them and say these confusing words, they would have impatiently drawn their swords to shut him up. But they all knew Robb's terror and mystery, and no one had the courage to do so. Rickard Stark stood up helplessly. "Okay, we obey your decision." After dealing with Gretchen and Rickard Stark, Robb immediately ordered the troops to set off. The main force followed Robb's Bolton and advanced along the King's Road. The main goal was to stop Tywin's army that was burning, killing, and looting along the King's Road. Robb himself, with less than 300 wolf riders, was ready to go to the ferry of the Riverine city and cross the Green Fork River to support the besieged Riverine. The Riverines were not far from Robb's location, and the wolf riders were all cavalrymen, so their speed was incomparable to that of the large army. In less than an hour, Robb could see the Riverines on the skyline. Theon Greyjoy looked around and said in a relaxed tone, "There are people tied to these road signs. All of them are spies of the Lannister family. It seems that Lord Free of the Riverines is on our side." Sir Blackfish's face was more solemn. "This doesn't mean anything. The Riverines have assembled a team of 4,000 people, but Lord Free did not go to Riverine when the Tullys assembled their vassals. It's one thing to defend your own territory, and it's another to go to war with the Lannisters for honor." Robb didn't comment in his heart. He knew that Lord Free had no honor at all, and only sufficient interests could move this guy. But this guy would never think that he and he were actually the same kind of people. The team soon arrived outside the Luan city. This was the first time Robb saw the castle, where the Red Wedding took place. It had 2 fortresses, one on each side of the Green Fork River, forming a horn-like situation. It was easy to defend, but difficult to attack. Even if Robb brought the main force to attack 20,000 people against 4,000 in the city, it would take a lot of time. Of course, the premise is that Robb will not attack with all his strength now. Looking at the tightly closed city gate, Sir Blackfish was so angry that his teeth itched. This old guy didn't take the oath he made seriously at all. "No wonder my brother has never trusted him," Robb said calmly. "I heard that Lord Free is old. He has the caution of an old man and the ambition of a young man, and he is also calculating. So such a person will definitely help whoever wins. This old turtle." Sir Blackfish cursed. The Lannister army burned farmland and looted farms in his territory, but he hid inside and didn't come out. From a distance, the walls of Luan City were full of spears and swords and large crossbows. Archers were deployed on every battlement and arrow hole. The drawbridge had been raised, and the gates had been lowered. Obviously, Lord Free had gathered all the 4,000 soldiers he had summoned into the castle. Just as everyone was observing the castle, a side door suddenly opened, extending a wooden bridge across the moat, and a dozen knights came towards them. They carried banners with a silver grey background and 2 dark blue towers, and each of them looked like a weasel. One rider was at the front, coming up to the front of Robb's group. He looked especially like an old, tired weasel, but he was still quite polite. "My father sent me to greet you all. May I ask who is leading this powerful group?" Robb rode forward. "You should have heard of my name, Robb Stark." Grey Wind followed Robb, his eyes revealing a savage gleam, staring at the other's horse. The old knight's watery grey eyes flashed with interest, but his mount snorted nervously and avoided the dire elf. "If you are willing to dine with my father in the city and explain your intentions, I'm sure he will be honored." Chapter 15 Educating the Weasel. When Sir Blackfish heard what the old knight said, he immediately said to Robb, "This is very dangerous. After we enter the castle, we will let him do whatever he wants. He can lock you up, or kill you, and send you to Tywin. It's up to him." Theon Greyjoy also felt that it was inappropriate, but he didn't say anything. In this case, he just had to follow Robb's orders. Robb didn't care. Most of the time, he was fighting alone. Not to mention the small Luan city, even the magnificent capital, he could kill people with one sword. He might not be able to kill all the 4,000 guards in Luan City, but if he wanted to get out of Luan City, no one could stop him. Robb nodded to the elderly knight. "Lead the way." The old knight's eyes gleamed with admiration. "My lord, as you command." On the way into the city, Robb spoke to the old knight. "I haven't asked for your name yet. You call Lord Free father?" The old knight politely replied, "Stephen Free, my lord. I'm just an insignificant knight under my father. I have more than 20 younger brothers. As for whether my father has other illegitimate sons and daughters, I don't know." Robb exclaimed, "Lord Free is really strong in his old age. With Lord Free's grandson and great-grandson, I'm afraid they can form an army. By the way, do you have a son?" Stephen Free smiled bitterly. "My grandson was born 5 years ago." Robb showed a regretful expression on his face. "I heard that you are the eldest son of Earl Free." It's really rare. There is no lord there who is more than 60 years old in the world. Stevlin Free's face changed slightly, as if Robb had touched his sore spot, and he became taciturn. Not long after, Robb met Lord Walder Free in the reception room of Luan City. He was 90 years old, like a shriveled pink weasel, with a bald head covered with age spots. Because of gout, he could not stand without help. A 16-year-old girl, pale and thin, walked in beside him on the stretcher. The reception room was filled with people from the Free family, including Free sons, grandsons, illegitimate sons and daughters, and some great-grandsons who were not young, at least 50 people. A long-lost poem popped up in Robb's mind. A pear tree overshadows a crabapple tree. The old man sat on the Lord's throne, and looked Robb up and down with a suspicious look. You are Robb Stark. You look much younger than I thought. Ha, young boy. But you are quite courageous. I thought a noble man like you would not want to see an old man like me. Father, Sir Stevrin said in a reproachful tone, have you forgotten? Lord Robb came here at your invitation. Am I asking you? I'm not dead yet, so you are not Lord Free. Do I look like a dead man? I don't need to listen to your lectures. Father, this is not the way to entertain guests, right? Said his other younger son. Even my illegitimate son is lecturing me? Lord Walder's face became gloomy. You will deserve to die. I can say whatever I want. I have entertained 3 kings in my life, not to mention the queen. Do you think I still need you to teach me the way of hospitality? When I first sowed seeds in your mother, she was still herding sheep. His sons were scolded and blushed, and stopped talking. Robb answered truthfully, I didn't expect you to be such a sarcastic old man, otherwise I wouldn't come to see you. The old weasel was furious. What are you talking about? You little brat whose hair hasn't even grown out yet. Do you think this is Winterfell, and you are surrounded by idiots who play the Lord's house game with you? If I want, I can have someone cut your neck at any time. You. Lord Free's curse stopped before he finished. His face turned red, revealing a look of fear. Robb looked at him with interest. Go on. Why don't you say anything? As he spoke, Robb raised the dagger in his hand, and the cold metal came into closer contact with Lord Free's neck, and a red bloodline appeared on Lord Free's neck. Lord Free's descendants didn't see how Robb appeared beside Lord Free. They only felt a flash before their eyes, and Robb's figure disappeared and then appeared. Hound steps, a fighting technique to quickly approach the enemy. Lord Free's sons stood up nervously, then drew their swords, and pointed them at Robb, fearing that they would not provoke Robb enough. The old man was so frightened that he didn't care about the wound on his neck and yelled, you damn fools, put down your swords, can't you see that I'm controlled by him? Robb watched their performance with interest. Your sons and grandsons seem to be eager for you to die in my hands. It seems that we have to talk privately. The old weasel shouted desperately. What are you looking at? Why don't you get out? You too, stinky woman, get out, get out, get out. His sons, grandsons, daughters, illegitimate children, grandsons, and granddaughters left the hall one after another. Robb obviously saw someone hesitating whether to rush up, but he didn't know whether his sword wanted to kill him or this old thing first. When everyone left, Lord Free immediately begged for mercy. Honorable Lord Robb, your father is imprisoned, and you will be the guardian of the North sooner or later. As a high and mighty duke, exchanging one for a lowly marquis like me is definitely the most unprofitable deal you have ever made. Robb laughed, took the knife away from Lord Free's neck, then stretched out his hand to lift him up, and threw him to the ground. I still like your rebellious look just now. Lord Free was knocked unconscious. He lay on the ground, and raised his head with difficulty. He saw Robb sitting on his lord's seat in a dignified manner. He thought about whether to take this opportunity to run out and call the guards to kill this damn bastard. But he looked at his legs that were struggling to stand up and silently gave up the idea. He couldn't guarantee that he could die behind the other party. You can't kill me. If you kill a noble without reason, no one will follow you. Do you want to be the second Mad King? Lord Free got up from the ground with difficulty. And no matter what you want, you just have to kill me. My sons, although they want me dead, as long as you kill me, they will kill you as well. Lord Free was right. This is the rule of the noble game in Westeros. Robb looked at him who was about to pee, and smiled and said, I didn't intend to kill you. I just came to negotiate some terms with you, but your mouth is too stinky. I just taught you a lesson." Hearing that his life was safe, Lord Free immediately stared at Robb with resentful eyes. Chapter 16 Friendly Negotiations. What a powerful look. I like it. Robb looked at the other's eyes, smiled and grabbed the handle of the dagger, and then threw it out. Lord Free screamed like a pig being slaughtered. "My foot." The dagger pierced Lord Free's foot. The tip of the knife sank into the floor, and the handle of the knife trembled on the foot. The descendants of the Free family who heard the sound outside all stretched their heads to look at the reception room. When they saw that Lord Free was not dead, they could not hide the disappointment on their faces, and retreated outside in anger. Robb looked at Lord Free who was screaming, "Maybe you can understand your situation now. In fact, I don't mind killing you." "Robb, my lord." Lord Free's face was pale. "You can ask for anything, and I will definitely satisfy it." Lord Free, who was over 90 years old, was unwilling to die like this. He had not tasted enough of the nectar of his newly married 16-year-old wife. His heart was full of fear. He was extremely sure that, if he made the young master in front of him dissatisfied, his head would fall to the ground immediately. Robb said, "It's very simple. I just hope you can keep your oath, show loyalty to my grandfather, open the city gate, and let my troops pass through Luan City." Lord Free spoke first. "No problem. I can open the city gate now." The reason why the old weasel agreed so quickly was because he knew that Robb only brought 300 cavalrymen. Even if he let these 300 people enter the city, he had 4,000 men under his command, which was completely dominant. The other side could not occupy Luan City with 300 people. Moreover, the battle situation in Reveron was tense now, and the other side would never entangle with him here for too long. As long as he let the other side pass, he would definitely rush to Reveron without stopping, and then his life could be saved. A happy smile appeared on Robb's face. He got down from his seat and came to Lord Free. "I'm glad that we can reach a consensus so quickly. It's really a friendly negotiation. You see, we don't have to be so awkward." The old weasel cursed in his heart, but showed a flattering smile on his face. "You are absolutely right. But I'm still a little worried. After my team crosses the river, you will be right behind me. 4,000 people, isn't it scary?" Lord Free quickly assured, "I swear I will never do anything that is humiliating." Robb didn't buy it at all. "You also swore to my grandfather, but now it seems that your oath is no different from the paper in the toilet. How about this? Let your son Steverin Free go to war with me, and to witness our friendship, I will let my uncle Edgemure marry one of your daughters. How about it?" Lord Free now just wants to survive. "Okay, no problem. He has so many sons and daughters, and giving away two is not a problem at all, and he won't feel bad." Robb smiled and said, "As for your 4,000 soldiers, I want to borrow them." Lord Free was very sincere. "Okay, I'll give them all to you. They will go with you to Reveron." "No way. As soon as you leave Luan City, I will send people to hunt you down." Robb laughed. "You misunderstood. I dare not use your people now to humiliate you like this. Your people will stay in Luan City. After I deal with the Kingslayer, I will come back to borrow these 4,000 people from you." "Ah, what does this little guy mean?" Lord Free found that he couldn't understand the boy in front of him. Every move of the opponent fell into a position that he didn't expect. His original plan was completely disrupted, and he followed the opponent's rhythm throughout the whole process. Is this little guy really only 15 years old? But, after all, he is still too naive. He thinks that the battlefield is like a child's play. He wants to defeat the Kingslayer with 300 people. Lord Free was calculating quickly in his mind. War is a matter of slaughter. This kid in front of him doesn't understand the cruelty of it at all. When he is defeated by the Kingslayer, I can make up for what happened today. At that time, I want the entire Stark family to be buried with him. Robb knew his thoughts very well. This old weasel who was vindictive would definitely not swallow this breath. He gave him another reason to rebel against himself. The plot of the bloody wedding was more important to Robb. This was an excellent event because there was an information gap between him and his opponent. As long as he could make good use of this information gap, Robb could achieve his desired goal. "I hope Uncle Edgemure won't mind that I have arranged a marriage for him in advance. It is said that this old weasel has a pretty good looking daughter, and his uncle should be satisfied." The matter was almost settled. Robb smiled and pulled out the dagger stuck in Lord Free's foot. Blood gushed out, and screams were heard. "Order the city gate to open, and let my team cross the river." Robb looked at this distorted face, and felt very happy. When the wolf riders crossed the bridge in an orderly manner, Robb also brought Lord Free to the city gate to join his team. Sir Stevron Free also put on his armor, and followed the wolf riders according to the agreement. Lord Free was about to cry, Now you can let me go. My feet are still bleeding, and I will die if this goes on." Robb was embarrassed. Logically, I should let you go, but how can I be sure that you will not bring 4,000 people to hunt me down? I swear I will never do that. Look, you swear again. Robb slapped the old weasel's face with the blade of the dagger. "I said your oath was worthless." Lord Free said in a crying voice. "Then, what should I do to make you believe that what I said is true?" Robb thought for a while. "Call your other sons. You walk 5 kilometers with us, and then you can go back to Luan City with your sons." Then, regardless of whether Lord Free agreed or not, he threw him to Theon. "Stop the bleeding from his feet, otherwise the old thing will die soon." The wolf riders carried Lord Free all the way forward. As agreed, Robb asked the Free family to pick up Lord Free 5 kilometers away. "Old man, do 2 things when you go back. Prepare a grand wedding, and get your 4,000 men ready to go." Most of the soldiers in Luan City were infantrymen, mainly defensive. With a distance of 5 kilometers between them and the cavalry, they could basically declare that they would never catch up with Robb's team. And poor Lord Free was punched by Robb before he left. This punch was enough to make him unconscious for a day and a night. When he woke up and wanted to give orders, the world might have been turned upside down. After crossing Luan City, the wolf cavalry team had no more obstacles along the way, and they rushed towards Reveron. Stevron Free followed Robb. He was a little puzzled. "Why do you want me to go with you? My father has many sons. He doesn't care whether I live or die. It's impossible for you to threaten him with me. And the conditions you discussed with my father, he will never agree to after you did those things." Robb rode on the horse with spurs. "It doesn't matter. After I defeat Jaime Lannister and regain the Riverlands, he will have no say over it. As for why I want you to follow me, don't you know, the heir to the Marquis for 60 years. Stevron Free did not answer Robb's words directly. "Are you so confident that you can defeat the Kingslayer?" Robb looked ahead. "I never doubted myself." Chapter 17. 10 times the enemy. The stream gurgles, and the moonlight sparkles. The fast-flowing stream breaks the full moon, and the rustling of leaves in the woods and the neighing of horses linger in the ears. After a long journey, the wolf riders finally found a place to rest temporarily in the whispering woods near Reveron. Grey Wind was a little anxious, and kept shuttling back and forth between the soldiers, causing a commotion and the sound of armor colliding and rubbing. "Good boy, you should be quiet for a while." Robb grabbed Grey Wind and let it stay with him. At this time, Sir Blackfish came out of the woods. He was very busy today. In order to cover the whereabouts of the team, he did not dare to rest for a moment, and was always in a state of mental tension. "Jaime has no idea of our movements. Not a single raven has returned to his camp, and I have killed all the Lannister scouts I have encountered." Robb now trusts Sir Blackfish very much. He has proved himself to Robb with his strength in the past 2 days. He is a rare talent and his second grandfather. "Tell me about the situation of Jaime's army." Sir Blackfish hesitated. "They have about 3,000 cavalry and about 10,000 infantry. I have barely managed to get in touch with Reveron. The army in Reveron is now commanded by Lord Blackwood of Raventree Keep, and there are about 3,000 to 4,000 people." Robb chuckled. "Ha, 4,000 people against 13,000 people. It seems that the advantage is on the other side." Sir Blackfish didn't know whether his cousin was arrogant or confident, but his relaxed expression still made Blackfish's crazy beating heart ease a little. "It's not that there is no good news." Sir Blackfish drew a picture for Robb on the sand. "Because Reveron has a special geographical location, it is located at the angle between the Red Fork River and the Tumblestone River. In order to surround Reveron, the Kingslayer had to divide his army into 3 places, and their forces were very dispersed." Robb thought for a while. "The importance of cavalry is far greater than that of infantry. We must first find a way to eat up the Lannister cavalry in one bite." Sir Blackfish immediately offered a plan. "The 3,000 cavalry of the Lannister family are all led by the Kingslayer. These precious guys will not participate in the siege. They usually clean up the scattered resistance forces in the riverlands near the battlefield. Earl Blackwood, who is guarding the city, sometimes sends troops to harass the defenders besieging Riverrun, but they are all hunted down by the Kingslayer's cavalry. The Kingslayer is very strong and very violent. We can disguise ourselves as the defenders of Riverrun and lure Jaime here. Robb thought this plan was feasible, but when he saw that Sir Blackfish looked a little hesitant, he asked, "What's wrong? What's the problem?" Sir Blackfish looked around, "But we only have 300 people, my lord. There are 3,000 cavalrymen on the other side, with a number ratio of 10 to 1. So, do you think we will lose?" Sir Blackfish organized his words carefully. "I don't know, but it will definitely be a hard battle. The Kingslayer is very powerful. He almost destroyed the entire Riverlands by himself. You saw the tragic scene along the way. Jaime's army has won 2 consecutive victories, and is in high spirits. We are too few in number." Robb patted him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, no matter how powerful the Kingslayer is, he is just one person." Sir Blackfish wanted to say, "Aren't you also one person?" Robb looked at Theon. Theon understood what Robb meant, put his finger in his mouth, and blew a whistle. Woody. After hearing the whistle, all the wolf riders in the Whispering Woods took action instantly. Their movements were like those of actors who had practiced countless times, with a neat beauty in the chaos. Within 10 seconds, all the wolf riders found their horses. They had their armor on, and were holding spears or halberds, with the cold tips neatly arranged, quickly forming a neat square. They were silent, staring at their commander. The atmosphere in the forest suddenly became solemn, and the temperature seemed to drop. The somewhat bewildered Sir Blackfish and Steverin Free were at a loss, and they were shocked by the scene before their eyes. What kind of team was this? They had never seen such an army before. In such a short time, if they faced such an opponent, they might not have put on their armor yet, and this so-called wolf cavalry could have attacked them at any time. The two seemed to understand why Robb was so confident. Robb came to the wolf cavalry square. "We are about to engage in battle. There are about 3,000 people on the opposite side, all cavalry." The wolf cavalry square did not waver at all, and their eyes were still sharp. Robb took a deep breath and said, "This is your first battle, the Whispering Wood. You must remember this place, and the world will remember this place, because here, the first invincible team in history, the Wolf Riders, will start their first battle. No matter who the enemy is, let them know that winter is coming." The Wolf Riders' phalanx remained motionless, and no one said a word. There was nothing in the forest, except the sound of the stream running. But Sir Blackfish and Sir Stephen Free on the side seemed to hear the roar of thunder and fire, the howling of wind and ice and snow, and a force and momentum flowing in this team. At this moment, the two believed without reservation that they would win this battle. Although the number of the enemy was 10 times that of their own side, although the enemy had won battle after battle, and although their own side had traveled a long distance and was already exhausted, but this battle must be won. Sir Blackfish, send a raven to inform Lord Blackwood at Riverrun, and have them send out troops to harass the Lannister army that is besieging them. Little Number, Torhanka Stark, Edgar Stark, Clay Severn, Theon Greyjoy, and Daisy Mormont, the eldest daughter of Lady Maggie and the heir to Bear Island. Robb carefully selected a dozen wolf riders from noble families, and prepared to use them as bait to lure the enemy deeper. The children of nobles have much better physical fitness, and they have a higher chance of survival as bait. Robb also wants to take this opportunity to give them a stage to perform, so as to prepare for their subsequent promotion and win over the families behind them. Robb watched them leave. "I'll wait for you here, don't let me down." Theon and Little Jon held a spear with the flag of the Tully family in their hands, and disappeared into the night with a dozen people. Robb and the remaining wolf riders were lying in ambush on the back of the hill, waiting for the enemy to enter the depression in front of the hill, and then the wolf riders would launch the most deadly charge. After a deathly silence, a faint voice came from the distance. "Here they come." Sir Blackfish heard his own voice tremble. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 18. Lure the enemy deep. Outside Riverrun, the troops stationed in the north. Jaime the Kingslayer sat in the tent, surrounded by vassals loyal to the Lannister family. Unlike most of the vassals who had excitement on their faces, Jaime Lannister looked a little tired. In the eyes of the outside world, he had won several battles beautifully, but the actual difficulties were beyond the reach of outsiders. One of the vassals, Highlands, laughed heartily while looking at the map. The morale in the city is about to collapse. We only need 3 more days to take Riverrun. Jaime also breathed a sigh of relief. After taking Riverrun, the little wolf cubs in the north will never dare to step out of the swamp again, and the war with the north will be over. Earl Benford's face was flushed. Since the ancient Battle of Wrath, there has been no such glorious battle. Sir Jaime broke through the Riverlands alone. It has been a long time since there has been such a legendary figure. The vassals of the Lannister family were very happy because they had smelled the taste of fat and fresh meat. Now, the vast tracts of rich land in the Riverlands have become unowned lands because of the war. Each of them has the opportunity to fight for a share of the spoils for their family members. War is the art of slaughter and the fastest means of expansion. Jaime did not speak, but his face revealed a sense of satisfaction. As a knight, he was able to fight such a battle, which was enough for him to go down in history. This was a great comfort to him who valued honor and chivalry. For the people of King's Landing, he did not hesitate to bear the infamy of the Kingslayer during the Mad King's reign. Now he finally has the opportunity to change his reputation, and he is very pleased. Raising the glass of wine, Jaime signaled to all his subordinates. Cheers to Lannister. Long live Lannister. Long live the Westerlands. In a joyful atmosphere, the nobles drank the wine in their glasses. At this moment, an inconspicuous scout soldier broke in, breaking the peaceful atmosphere. Lord Jaime, we found enemy cavalry on the northern hillside. They are flying the banner of the Tullyfish family. Jaime didn't care. It's ridiculous that Lake would send people to harass us again, thinking that this can delay our attack. Seeing this, Highlands on the side shouted angrily, how many of them are they? The scouts sent out before have not returned yet. In fact, the scout who came to report had just walked out a few steps. He didn't know the situation on the other side of the hillside very well, so he could only speak vaguely. It's too dark to see clearly at night. There are probably about 10 cavalrymen. Highlands laughed. It seems that Lakewood is really at a loss. He can only send a dozen people. Lord Jaime, let me take people to get their heads back. Jaime didn't care about these few people at all. He didn't even walk out of the tent. He waved his hand and said, then I'll trouble you. The soldiers of the Riverlands had been beaten to a pulp by Jaime. Many people ran away as soon as they saw the lion flag. They had no intention of fighting at all, so Jaime subconsciously thought that the soldiers of the Riverlands were not worth mentioning. In addition, he had not received any news from the north, so he didn't think about it. Highlands was full of confidence. He returned to his tent and counted more than 30 cavalrymen. He followed the scouts who came to report to him and headed towards the hillside. The moonlight at night was particularly bright. Highlands saw a few soldiers on horseback standing on the hillside, and the leader was holding the fish-bottomed flag of the Tully family. Ha ha ha, watch out, the armor on them is free, follow me. Highlands, who had won 2 consecutive battles, was full of confidence. He whipped his horse, waved his spear, and rushed towards the group of river cavalry. As expected, the group of river cavalry turned around and ran to the back of the hillside, looking as if they were frightened by the ferocity of Highlands. Seeing the enemy fleeing, Highlands became even more excited, whipped his horse, and ordered the soldiers behind him to keep up. All of you charge, whoever kills those wimps, his horse and armor are yours to choose. First come first served. The remaining scout soldiers stayed at the bottom of the hillside, leisurely waiting for the battle. Soon, the sound of weapons intersecting and armor rubbing came from the other side of the hillside. Highlands and his cavalry shouted and cursed loudly, and screams were endless. It's estimated that the battle will be over in 10 minutes, and then I can go back and tell Lord Jaime the good news. The scout thought idly. Soon, the shouting on the hillside gradually subsided, and the battle seemed to be coming to an end. To the scout's surprise, he did not wait for Highlands, who returned victoriously, but he could not believe his eyes. The cavalrymen of the Tully family turned back from the other side of the hillside, continued to hold the flag, and stood silently in the same position just now. They did not say a word, and were extremely silent, but the scout felt an inexplicable oppression, as if his breathing was stagnant. Where is Lord Highlands? Where are his cavalrymen? Were they all killed? Not daring to make too many associations, the scout recalled his job in time. He kicked his spurs vigorously, and fled madly to James' base camp. The cavalrymen of the Tully family did not move at all. They stood on the hillside like sculptures, allowing the scout to go back and report the news, with indifference in their eyes. What? Lord Highlands was captured? In the tent, James was furious when he heard the news, but he also immediately realized that his opponent this time seemed to be not simple, so he grabbed the armor beside him and dressed in a very short time. Let all the horsemen gather, I want to see who has such great ability. The 3,000 cavalrymen suddenly became agitated, just like a few drops of water were sprinkled into an oil pan, and the whole tent was boiling. Those who led horses, wore armor, and looked for their family heirloom swords were in a mess. After more than 10 minutes, James' 3,000 cavalrymen gathered smoothly and followed the Kingslayer to the small hillside behind. After a few steps, James also saw the dozen statue-like cavalrymen. He didn't know the leader, which meant that the other party was not a big nobleman who could be called by name. Although the other party was different from the Tully family knights he often saw, James still didn't take the other party seriously. He was still angry and wanted to lead the people to charge in person. Earl Benford stopped him and said, Lord James, you are the commander-in-chief of our army. You are of noble status and cannot be easily moved. Let me go to the battle for you. James knew that he wanted the horses and armor of the cavalry. Since Earl Benford wanted to monopolize the spoils, let him do as he pleased. So he agreed to Earl Benford's request. Unlike the reckless Earl Highlands, Earl Benford was meticulous. He brought more than 100 cavalrymen, with a tenfold difference in troops. Even if there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that he could not beat the opponent, he should be able to retreat unscathed. Thanks to Wang Ziohe below for the monthly ticket. Chapter 19. The confrontation of two armies. When Lord Benford led his men to charge, the cavalry on the hillside ran to the back of the hillside in tacit understanding. Just like before, James couldn't see the battle situation over there. He could only hear the soldiers' curses and screams. This battle lasted much longer than before. After an unknown amount of time, cavalry finally appeared in James' sight on the hillside. They were Lord Benford's men. The scout who had gone back to report the news secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, we finally won. It was really a ghost just now. But soon, the people on the Lannister side found that something was wrong. More and more cavalry under Lord Benford appeared on the hillside, but they didn't seem to return victorious, but some defeat. The number of people seemed wrong too. It was no longer 100 people, but only more than 70 people ran back. Finally, when Lord Benford ran back on his horse, James the Kingslayer realized that his previous guess was correct. The helmet of the Earl of Benford was twisted, and the weapon in his hand was thrown away. His face was full of fear, and he ran towards the Lannister army wailing, "Be careful, don't let them disrupt the formation." After giving the order, James grabbed the fleeing Earl of Benford, and without waiting for him to calm down, he took a pot of water from the servant and poured it on the head of the Earl of Benford. "Calm down. Why did you run back? Is there an ambush in the woods behind?" The Earl of Benford, stimulated by the cold water, regained some of his sanity. He was terrified and said intermittently, No ambush, just these dozen people, too strong. We can't withstand a 3-round charge." They didn't say a word. The last sentence was repeated by the Earl of Benford twice. The scene just now really shocked him greatly. A dozen armored cavalrymen, carrying large guns silently, rushed towards you with a death-like silence. He never wanted to experience that scene again. James was furious. Only those dozen people. It only took 3 rounds of charge to disperse you? Earl Benford stammered. They are not afraid of death. James despised Earl Benford in his heart. When it came to grabbing the credit, he knew to rush to the first place, but when he was asked to fight a bloody battle, he ran away instead. He had no chivalry at all. Under the cover of the moonlight, the dozen cavalrymen returned to their original positions again, silently confronting James's 3,000 cavalrymen. However, the battle just now also caused them to lose some personnel, and they didn't know how many were killed or injured. In any case, the fact that a dozen cavalrymen could defeat more than 100 cavalrymen head-on was enough to prove that the enemy in front of them was the elite among the elite. James narrowed his eyes and looked at the other party, his anger boiling in his heart. Damn it, this is a humiliation and contempt for us. He put on his helmet to protect his vitals, leaving only a pair of eyes looking forward. The whole army presses forward and try to keep as many people alive as possible. I want them alive. He was determined to send out the whole army to capture all the dozen elite cavalrymen and ask them about their origins. The team of 3,000 cavalrymen first slowly adjusted their positions. When everything was ready, rows of soldiers rode their horses and whipped their whips in front and behind, forming a thunderous momentum in an instant. Any inexperienced commander would be caught off guard by James' move, and he might have entered the attack range of the cavalry before he could react. Little John held the banner of the Tully family and was a little unprepared when he saw James suddenly pressing forward with a large army. Fortunately, I don't have to fight such an opponent alone. I have Robb, the young wolf lord, behind me, he thought. The young wolf lord is the private name given to Robb by the vassals in the north, which is out of respect and admiration. But Little John had always wanted to change his name, a name that belonged only to the wolf riders for Robb, otherwise he could not distinguish himself from ordinary soldiers. Without time to think too much, seeing that his purpose as a bait had been achieved, Little John turned his horse's head and rushed to the designated location. Seeing the enemy rushing towards the Whispering Wood, James calculated in his mind and suspected that the other party had ambushes in the woods. However, there were only a dozen people on the other side. Seeing so many cavalrymen, it was normal for them to hide in the woods. It was impossible for them to charge at him with a dozen people, right? When Little John saw James slowing down, he immediately slowed down his horse as well, as if teasing James. James' patience was gradually exhausted, and anger occupied the high ground of his brain, and he rushed directly towards Little John's team. This chase game lasted for 10 minutes, and the two sides finally came to a sunken terrain. Little John accelerated suddenly, rushed to the small hill on the side, and joined the main force. Robb had already heard the thundering sound of horses' hooves. When the scout saw the position of Little John, he immediately turned around and stood on the hilltop with his wolf riders to welcome Little John. Whoa. Sure enough, there are ambushes. James was startled by the sudden appearance of the cavalry and immediately pulled up the reins to slow down. But when James saw the other side's personnel deployment clearly under the moonlight, he immediately felt relieved. 300 people. Robb the kid. Heh. Looking around, the surroundings were unusually quiet, and it was unlikely that there were other reinforcement. Kingslayer. How are you? It's been a while since we last met. Robb looked down at the cavalry phalanx that was 10 times larger than his own, without any panic on his face, which made James puzzled. Could it be that this kid didn't know anything about the battlefield? Seeing that the other party did not speak, Robb continued, you had an affair with that bitch Cersei, but you pushed my brother Bran Stark, who discovered your affair, off the tower, causing him to be disabled for life. I also heard that you pierced my father's knee with a spear in King's Landing, causing him to have to walk with crutches. I also heard that your son and mistress tied up my father, making a respectable king's hand suffer in the dungeon. Lannister, what a ridiculous family. Robb's words echoed on the battlefield, and the wolf riders were indignant. The rage in their chests was stimulating their bodies. The Lannister army was a little confused, not knowing whether the incestuous affair Robb said was true. They felt that their coach was really good at playing. As for Ned's affairs, they didn't care at all. James felt a surge of hot blood rushing to his head, and he was about to lose his mind. He roared, shut up, you damn bastard. When I kill you, this battle will be over. What do you think 300 people can do? Forget it. After all, it's a battlefield. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Robb was too lazy to talk nonsense. He raised his right hand silently, as if holding something up. More than 3,000 people looked at Robb's strange movements. All of them were a little confused. Robb suddenly clenched his right hand. Crackling, sizzling. The next moment, a spear made of golden thunder appeared in his hand. Chapter 20. Roar of the Ice Dragon. Thunder Gun. Summon the Thunder Gun and throw it straight forward. The straight trajectory and indestructible strength make the Thunder Gun skill Robb's favorite spell. He has used this prayer spell to defeat countless powerful enemies. In the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, although spells can still be accepted and believed by people, these strange abilities have long been hidden in the dust and unknown to ordinary people. When the soldiers on the battlefield saw that Robb could actually control lightning and play with this most powerful and mysterious natural force with his every move, everyone's heart was moved. Miracle. The Wolf Riders were fine, as they had seen Robb use a blade made of red lightning to kill executed prisoners before, but the Lannister army was seeing this scene for the first time. They were stunned, and many of them had not yet recovered when Robb had already thrown the Thunder Gun. Protect the commander. Lord Jaime. Stop it. Robb's lightning gun was undoubtedly aimed at Jaime. To catch a thief, you must first catch the leader. As long as Jaime falls, the battle is mostly won. But the Lannister family's servant knights reacted quickly. Unsure of the power of this move, they rushed to Jaime. The powerful penetrating ability of the lightning gun directly pierced these people through the heart and came directly in front of Jaime's helmet, knocking his helmet to the ground, revealing his golden hair. What a pity. Robb shook his head. Someone was willing to use his body to block his prayer spell. Jaime watched the 4 knights in front of him fall to the ground to save him. He was shocked and angry. He didn't know what evil magic the other party used. But soon, he reacted and shouted to his soldiers, "Don't be afraid, he was just pretending to be mysterious. It takes a few seconds for that little brat to cast such an evil spell. Let's just rush up and chop him." In order to motivate his men, Jaime added a lot of conditions. Lannister, debts must be paid. 500 gold dragons for Robb's head, we will do what we say. Under the temptation of a large amount of gold coins, the army of the Lannister family regained a lot of morale. For humans, as long as there is enough profit, life is not a problem. 3,000 cavalrymen against less than 300 cavalrymen. The morale of the side with the advantage in manpower is very high. Strangely, the side with fewer people is also eager to fight. This will be a bloody battle. Charge. Don't give that little devil wizard time to cast a spell. Kill them all. Jaime led the way and roared. But he was soon surpassed by the more greedy Lannister soldiers. The power of 500 gold dragons far exceeded everyone's imagination. 3,000 cavalrymen rushed towards the same target together, and this momentum was enough to become a great terror between life and death for a person. The Wolf Riders' arms holding their spears were trembling. This was their first time to participate in such a battle, and it was also their first official battle as Wolf Riders. Fear, terror, excitement, bloodthirstiness, disgust, all kinds of emotions intertwined, and finally suppressed by the emotion called rationality, and the brain was emptied to a blank. Looking down at the enemy, Robb saw 3,000 pairs of greedy eyes staring at him viciously. There was no ripple in his heart, and he had seen more crazy eyes than this. But if he let his Wolf Riders, who were less than 300 people, fight against these 3,000 people directly, even if he could win, it would be a miserable victory, and in the end, there would probably be only a few people left, which was not the result Robb wanted. So, Robb decided to show his true strength a little bit, and see how large a battle he could completely control. Robb suddenly stood on the horse, and looked down at all the Lannister family soldiers who were about to rush towards him. Then, all the soldiers on the battlefield saw a scene that they would never forget in their lives. What the hell is that? Under the moonlight as white as snow, the originally somewhat sultry weather suddenly turned cold, and white became the main color without knowing when. Robb jumped up on his horse, his hands burst into red light, and then a magical blue rune appeared on his head. Then, a shadow of a dragon's head appeared on Robb's head. The shadow of the dragon completely covered Robb's head, making Robb look like a fantasy creature with a dragon's head and a human body. The shadow of the dragon's head was white all over. If you put the white horns and scales under the sun and study them carefully, you will find that the white is actually frost covering the black dragon scales. The dragon's shadow opened its mouth, and the cold element condensed in its mouth, gradually forming a blizzard. The next second, the icy dragon's breath gushed out from the dragon's air. Winter is coming. Ice Mist of Perilous transforms itself into a dragon and sprays the Ice Mist of Perilous from the air. Westeros was originally a giant dragon living on the snowy mountains of the plateau. Affected by the environment, its dragon breath turned into a unique Ice Mist dragon breath, which not only caused huge damage, but also could freeze the opponent. It happened that our comrade the Faded had mastered a powerful and mysterious secret technique, and had a bit of a quirk of collecting things, so a Fade could learn the dragon breath spell in front of it by killing the dragon, and eating its heart. It's so cold. Dragon. I saw a dragon. Robb turned into a dragon. Is my eyes blurry? Run. Is it witchcraft? I just saw his weird appearance. Jaime was anxious. No one is allowed to run. Kill Robb first, the supervisor team. In just half a minute, the Lannister army at the front lost 100 or 200 people in an instant, either frozen to death or losing all combat capabilities. There were also a dozen frozen corpses at the front. Jaime had just come to the rear wing of the team by mistake, but fortunately he was not frozen into an ice stick by Robb. Otherwise Jaime would have left another thing worth talking about for future generations. On the hillside, the spell was finished, and Robb felt the horse's legs trembling. It probably sensed the blood suppression of the dragon clan, and its tears could not stop flowing. Its body was almost kneeling on the ground. Even Grey Wind, the dire wolf who was always fearless and arrogant, clamped his tail during Robb's transformation, as if he sensed some fear. Robb sensed his body. Although there is no mana bar in real life, these spells consume my mental power. There is no elemental bottle here to help me recover quickly, so I can only recover mana by resting. I can't release this high level spell again in a short time. After summarizing his physical condition, Robb turned around and saw that the Lannister army that had been breathed by frost had been in disarray and the formation was difficult to maintain. The lords who fight on their own have poor discipline and cannot keep up with Robb's highly centralized fighting style. Thanks to JJC1221 and for their monthly tickets. Chapter 21 Follow Me Charge. Although the Lannister army did not suffer much loss, with only more than 100 people losing their combat capability, the scene of Robb turning into a dragon and instantly killing 100 people was deeply imprinted in everyone's mind. Morale collapsed. They didn't know if Robb could continue to use his powerful ability just now, and they didn't know when their lives would disappear. This reminded them of the legendary battles in ancient times. They heard from children to adults that the Targaryen family rode 3 dragons to sweep across the continent. That was a dragon. For the residents of Westeros, ruling under the symbol of dragons for hundreds of years, they have long formed a worship of dragons. Robb knew this mentality, so he chose to use a spell like Dragon Prayer, which consumes a lot of energy. My mental strength is slowly recovering. According to the current progress, it is estimated that I can cast a complete dragon breath again after resting for an hour. Robb could sense that his energy was recovering, and he could already cast some spells that did not consume much energy. So Robb's hands lit up with different colors of light and began to cast prayer spells to enhance his combat capability. Beast Vitality. Store Beast Vitality in the body, which can slowly restore blood volume over a certain period of time. Flame. Give me strength. Ignite flames on the body. Increase power and fire damage ability. Dragon Thunder Blessing. Lightning wraps around the body, which can help the blessed person deflect attacks more easily. Black Flame Blessing. Ignite black flames on the body to reduce damage. Robb cast out prayers for defense or attack one by one and slapped them on his body. At night, Robb's body continued to light up in various colors. Orange and black flames intertwined. Golden lightning and dark beast vitality flowed. It was like a god descending to the world. Robb finally raised the long sword in his hand and stabbed it towards the sky. A golden holy light enveloped all the wolf riders. Golden Tree Vow. Prayer to improve the attack and defense capabilities of yourself and your friends. All the wolf riders felt that their bodies were full of power, and an unprecedented sense of fulfillment spread throughout their bodies. Their eyes became more and more fanatical, and the hands holding the spears no longer trembled. Seeing that the time was ripe, Robb swung the sword in his hand downward suddenly, and 300 wolf riders rode their horses together, silently charging towards the already somewhat scattered Lannister army. The spearheads of the spears shone with silver light under the reflection of the moonlight, just like a neat group of fireflies flying forward. Robb took the lead and rushed directly into the enemy camp with shining light. Woohoo. Don't panic. There are less than 300 people on the other side. Jaime roared with all his strength, commanding his nobles. They are coming for me. 300 people dare to charge the central army. You should immediately take your people to the two sides, speed up the charge and smash them directly. Seeing that his noble lords were still a little dazed, Jaime was furious, and he stood on a high place and cursed without caring about the rain of arrows flying towards him. Don't you have brains? Robb is coming for me. If you stay here, you will have to face the charge of that monster head on. Let you go to the two sides. Why don't you roll over quickly? I will leave 1,000 people here, and the other 2,000 will go to the side to kill. As long as there is a round of charge, the opponent will be killed, and we will win. Jaime's roar worked after all. After hearing it, some timid lords were, as if they had been pardoned, and hurriedly took their men to move to the two sides. However, in the absence of unified command, the team was in chaos. Some teams on the left wanted to ambush on the right, and some teams on the right wanted to ambush on the left. The soldiers were frightened again, and they kept looking back, thinking that if they ran back to the base camp, they might have a chance of survival. If there was no supervision team behind them, some of them would have run away long ago. Of the 3,000 cavalry troops, only less than half can maintain normal deployment and adjustment. This is enough. Jaime thought. 1,500 people are enough to kill the 300 cavalry on the opposite side. Jaime rode on the horse, took the helmet brought by his men, and looked at Robb, who was rushing towards him. Robb, I'm here. Come on. Robb, kill me with your witchcraft, you bastard. Lannister, hear me roar. Kill. Jaime cursed Robb loudly, shouted the motto of the Lannister family, trying to inspire his troops and pull back their morale that was on the verge of collapse. He saw through Robb's intention, but he did not run away, but chose to fight Robb head on. He spat and muttered to himself, come on, you son of a bitch, let's see whether you can defeat my center faster or my wings can penetrate faster. But no matter how Jaime roared and provoked, the 300 knights who were charging at high speed on the opposite side never said a word. They were like the legendary Death Knights, and they could only bring eternal silence to the enemy. The people who were resisting Robb's Wolf Riders head on had begun to feel fear. If it weren't for Jaime's voice that kept echoing in their ears, they would have run away long ago. Bang! The first thing to break was the ice sculpture of the soldiers frozen by Robb's icy dragon breath, and then the Lannister cavalry saw the firefly-like spear tip. The two waves of charging cavalry collided with each other, and at this moment, the Wolf Riders who had been silent all the time finally opened their mouths and roared for the first time tonight. Winter is coming. The Lannister army, which was already on the verge of collapse, was frightened by this sudden roar and had already broken their hearts and gallbladders. They were horrified to find that their spears could not penetrate the most dazzling person on the battlefield. Robb was the first to charge into the Lannister army. Several spearheads immediately appeared in front of Robb, but Robb, who had prayed for several times, ignored these soft spears and chopped off the spearheads directly to the ground with his sword. Grey Wind followed closely behind. His strong body and the wolf howl that frightened the horses almost instantly made some cavalrymen lose control of their mounts. Grey Wind jumped up, twisted his body, and clung to the throat of a horse, and the bright red blood wet its hair. Robb swung his sword. It was a simple and unpretentious sword, but the enemy on the opposite side could only watch the sword cut his throat. In the blink of an eye, several Lannister cavalrymen had been killed by Robb. One man and one wolf tore a hole at the beginning of the battle. The wolf cavalrymen behind him filed in one after another. Their spears were invincible and instantly pierced through the Lannister army's defense line. It also broke their last psychological defense line. Chapter 22 Water Bird Sword Dance. Robb rushed into the battle array, facing the Lannister army like a tiger into a flock of sheep, and started the simplest slaughter mode. The sword in his right hand split a knight's head, and his left hand reached out in another direction, and a violent burst of flames directly burned a knight who rushed towards him into charcoal. On the battlefield, all fighting skills were forgotten. Robb was now completely relying on instinct to mobilize all kinds of energy in his body, mechanically repeating the slashing action, subconsciously using various spells and prayers, cruelly and ruthlessly harvesting lives. Lion slash, double slash, spinning slash. One after another combat skills were performed. Robb was like a dancer on the battlefield, elegant and cruel. In less than 10 minutes, a no man's land appeared around Robb. The bodies of the Lannister soldiers piled up together, and the blood dyed Robb's body red, looking like he had been soaked in a bucket of blood. Ghost. Ghost. It's a blood ghost, coming to take our lives. Run, we've lost. Seeing this hellish scene, the Lannister soldiers were so frightened that they finally couldn't resist the fear in their hearts, dropped their weapons and fled. The Wolf Riders were even more rampant. They almost forgot that they were fighting a difficult battle with an enemy 10 times their size. They surrounded Robb, strangled the remnants of the defeated soldiers, and resisted the cavalry who wanted to continue to rush to Robb. The army is a huge collective. It is not a simple whole. If someone wants to escape, there are others who want to organize forces to resist. So strange scenes of defeat and bloody battles often appear on the battlefield. The Kingslayer Jaime saw that Robb was like a man in a deserted place, and he completely penetrated his central army in less than half an hour, and rushed towards him recklessly. He was a little distracted for a moment. He heard the sound of horses' hooves galloping, iron boots splashing shallow water, the dull sound of swords chopping oak shields, the friction of steel colliding, bows and arrows whistling, drums thundering, and 1,000 horses screaming at the same time. After the trance, Jaime immediately reacted, "Follow me. Follow me." Although the thousands of troops in the Central Army were defeated, and the supervisory team could not change the defeated army's morale, Jaime still had his personal guards. Jaime knew that there was only one way to turn the battle around, that is, to lead his men to hold Robb back. Once the Central Army was defeated, the border troops that were separated to attack the enemy's two wings would also be confused, and even Robb would turn the team around and defeat them one by one. Jaime barely gathered a few hundred people, holding a spear under his armpit, and launched a final attack on where Robb was. "Kill. Follow me, kill." Jaime shouted to cheer the team. But his shouting also attracted Robb's attention. At this time, the blood had blurred Robb's eyes. After wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, Robb finally saw the situation in front of him clearly. That iconic blonde hair. It must be Jaime the Kingslayer. "How can you organize people to charge at me?" Robb was a little surprised, stopped casting other prayer spells, just held the long sword, and waited quietly for Jaime's arrival. "Robb!" Jaime roared and swung his sword, slashing several people, all of whom were defeated Lannister soldiers. In the dark night, the two could clearly see each other, but the crowd was surging, and this short journey took more than 10 minutes. Jaime saw that all kinds of strange lights on Robb's body had disappeared at this moment, and he was no different from an ordinary person. His evil magic is gone. Catch him and kill him. Jaime was in high spirits, and continued to encourage his soldiers. Robb looked at the other side coldly as they rushed over. The Wolf Riders quickly gathered and prepared to fight the other side head on. Robb waved his hand to suppress the restlessness of the Wolf Riders. He got off the horse. When Jaime saw this abnormal scene, he was delighted at first, thinking that the other party had taken the wrong medicine, but then his heart sank. He knew that the other party was not a fool, and he must have a backup plan to dare to do such a thing. But no matter what, this is a charge that determines the outcome, Jaime thought. Then Jaime saw Robb clenching the sword in his hand, and then jumping high towards his army. He stopped in the air for a second strangely, keeping the posture of swinging the sword. Then, rushing towards him at a speed and angle that violated common sense, Robb sprinted in front of Jaime, and swung his sword. Countless sharp white sword key instantly appeared around Robb. Ding 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 clang clang. Jaime felt that his armor was hit countless times at this moment, and then his body lost balance and fell off the horse. His horse was beheaded by one of the sword key in an instant. Robb didn't even look at him, who fell to the ground, and his sword dance was not over yet. Another sprint, stopping at the place where the most Jaime's troops were. Countless swords protected Robb's body, and instantly cleared one no man's land after another. Robb's figure was strange. In the eyes of the Lannister soldiers, he was like a ghost that appeared and disappeared suddenly in a place, took away the lives of the place, and then left quickly. War is the art of killing, and Robb is the dancer on the battlefield. Waterfowl sword dance. The Valkyrie's iconic fighting skills were once again displayed in Robb's hands. Seeing Robb fighting in the enemy's formation, the Wolf Riders were greatly encouraged and rushed up to fight with the Lannister army. Their spears were raised high, and any soldier who blocked the way was instantly pierced. The opponent's soul has been scattered and lost the will to fight. As long as they fight, they can win. As long as they follow Lord Robb, they can win. Fight. Follow the place where the blood appears. Follow the leader covered in blood. Fight, and then defeat the enemy. Winter is coming. The Wolf Riders roared for the second time in this war, this time, bringing the direct army of Kingslayer Jaime into the abyss of despair. Jaime was lying on the ground, his body was covered with scars. He got up with some difficulty and wanted to organize the team to fight again. He didn't believe that Robb was made of iron and would never get tired. But unfortunately, he was not made of iron. Sir Blackfish appeared in front of him. Looking at Jaime, who was bleeding all over, he did not hesitate to attack him, knocked him to the ground with the spear, and then dragged the dizzy Jaime to parade in the whole field. Jaime is captured. Surrender and you won't be killed. Jaime is captured. Surrender and you won't be killed. Sir Blackfish and several Wolf Riders ran around the battlefield, showing Jaime to his cavalrymen as if showing off. At this moment, the cavalrymen of the Lannister family were truly doomed. Except for a few scattered sworn knights who wanted to snatch back Jaime's body. They thought Jaime was killed by Robb. The rest of the cavalry began to flee aimlessly. The Wolf Riders began a reckless pursuit. Thanks to Diogen Kingsunzi for the 100-point reward. Chapter 23 Debts must be paid. The battle lasted until the early morning, when the first rays of sunlight shone into the Whispering Wood. This war that was destined to go down in history finally subsided. In the woods, blood-colored dew condensed on the leaves and grass, dripping along the texture onto the bodies, and then quickly disappeared. Robb sat under a tree to rest. Grey wind served as Robb's backrest, protecting him tightly, and a gurgling sound came out of his throat. Last night, he was howling and fighting, and his throat was not very comfortable now. The rest of the Wolf Riders sat around, and a few Wolf Riders dragged their tired bodies to guard in the jungle, guarding against the sudden attack of the enemy near Riverrun. As for the scattered bodies and spoils on the ground, they really didn't have the extra energy to sort them out. Sir Blackfish sat opposite Robb and reported the results of last night's battle. We captured nearly 100 knights and a dozen nobles, including Earl Westerling, Earl Benford, Sir Giles Greenfield, Earl Islam, Sir Titus Brax, Mauler the Dornishman. We also captured 3 Lannisters, all nephews of Lord Tywin, 2 of whom are his sisters and 1 is his dead brother. The bodies are still being counted, and we don't know how many people died on the opposite side. According to my estimation, about half of the enemies escaped after an hour of fighting. These series of names gave Robb a headache. Tell me about our casualties. I care more about this. Sir Blackfish paused. We lost 58 people and more than 100 were injured. Robb felt a little sad. If possible, he really hoped that none of his Wolf Riders would be sacrificed. This is war, and only blood and fire can forge outstanding warriors. Theon Greyjoy sat on Robb's left-hand side. We caught the Kingslayer. Now the bastard in King's Landing will be dumbfounded. Lord Ned is saved. I hope so. Robb knew that King Joe should go crazy and kill Ned Stark at this time, but there was still hope to save his 2 sisters. Although the 2 will experience hardships in the subsequent plot and then gain their own growth, Robb would rather his relatives spend their lives in the greenhouse. Suffering is not the only thing that can make people grow. Those who sing the praises of suffering must have ulterior motives. Robb looked at the remaining more than 200 Wolf Riders. Although their faces were full of fatigue, their expressions were very excited. For many of the knights, this battle is worth bragging about in the tavern for a lifetime. This team can continue to fight, but only after enough rest. Robb began to think about the current situation. Riverrun still needs our support, and there are still more than 10,000 enemies besieging the city. But after they learned about the Battle of the Whispering Wood, their morale should fall to the bottom, and it is time for a decisive battle. Sir Blackfish, is there any news about Lord Jason Mallister? Jason Mallister is the Lord of Seawood. Currently, the Riverlands have been almost completely looted by the Lannister family. Only Riverrun and Seawood have not been breached. Seawood is near Riverrun, so Robb asked Blackfish to inform Jason Mallister early in the morning and let him take his men from Seawood to the Whispering Wood. After all, no matter how powerful the 300 wolf riders are, they can't break through the fortified camp of 10,000 people head on. This has nothing to do with courage, it's simply a suicidal act. Sir Blackfish's intelligence work is second to none. I got the news. This raven is lucky. It was not shot to death in the chaos. According to your instructions, Lord Jason Mallister of Seawood has set out with his army. But their speed is a bit slow, because they encountered many river soldiers and wandering knights who were defeated by Jaime before. He is absorbing these people and preparing to integrate the team. It is estimated that they will reach the Whispering Wood in 2 days with about 2,000 people. Robb calculated in his mind. The old weasel of Luan City can raise a team of 4,000 people by himself. Seawood City is not as rich as Luan City. With the remnant of defeated soldiers absorbed on the way, it is good to have more than 2,000 people. In addition, there are more than 3,000 people defending the city of Riverrun. Although the troops on his side are at a disadvantage, they can still fight. No matter how difficult it is, can it be more difficult than the battle last night? Having made up his mind, Robb began to give orders. In this case, let's wait here for Lord Jason to come with his men. Sir Blackfish, you should keep in touch with Riverrun. Once we attack, they also need to cooperate with us to counterattack. The next thing was simple. After the wolf riders had a good rest, they happily began to explore their spoils. Robb treated the wolf riders very well. In each battle, they would be given spoils according to their merits. The armor of these dead enemies was very expensive, and Robb would distribute it fairly. At the same time, Robb also began to meet his spoils. The Kingslayer Jaime was brought to Robb without his armor and covered in blood. His golden hair was dyed black by the dried blood. Sir Jaime, you are so arrogant, you almost conquered the Riverlands. Jaime raised his head and stared at Robb. Who the hell are you? Robb shrugged, just a poor man who wants to save his family. I won't kill you. Sending you back to King's Landing can bring back my family. Jaime's face was a little gloomy. This kind of prisoner exchanged after defeat was really a disgrace to his reputation. But the good news is that his reputation has already fallen to the bottom. Robb changed the subject, but besides this, we still have a score to settle. Jaime was a little confused. Robb kindly reminded, you pushed my brother down the stairs, causing him to be disabled for life. You pierced my father's knee in King's Landing, causing him to have to walk with crutches. Can you just let it go like this? You can do whatever you want. Jaime was very calm. He actually felt guilty about Bran. That was just a child, but he hurt him for his own selfish desires, and he deserved to be punished. Robb nodded. Very good. Without further ado, Robb swung his sword and cut off Jaime's left hand. This is revenge for Bran's disability. Before Jaime could scream, Robb had already pulled out a spear and threw it at Jaime's knee, piercing through Jaime's knee and sticking into the ground. Jaime's scream of pain echoed in the Whispering Wood. Robb wiped his hands. It's fair. Disability and disability. Piercing through the knee. And piercing through the knee. Lannister. This time a debt must be paid. Chapter 24 Delayed Battle Report. Father, are you surprised that I'm still alive? The dwarves hold up a big shield, which is a headache for their archers. After the battle, Tyrion crawled out of the sea of blood and found his father, saying irrelevant witticisms. His father is the current Warden of the West, the head of the Lannister family, Tywin Lannister. Tywin was dressed in a gorgeous lion costume, facing his son whose arm was almost cut off. His face showed no emotion. He was busy tasting wine from a jeweled cup and enjoying the joy of victory. Seeing this, Tyrion pretended to be panicked and said, "Oh, if I'm not dead, will it ruin your plan? If so, I deserve to die." Tywin glanced at him and said, "The wildlings you brought out from the bottom of the Arin Valley are still useful. I did put you in the unorganized and undisciplined left phalanx. According to my idea, Robb, that young boy, should have pressed forward with the army as soon as he saw the left wing was defeated. Haha, you threw me into a losing team and put my son's neck on the enemy's blade with your own hands, and you refused to tell me in advance so that I could understand it." Tywin drank the wine in the cup and said, "If everyone knew, it would not be a military secret. If you knew that you were going to die, could you still act so realistically?" Tyrion looked at this so-called father with disgust and said nothing. Just because he was a natural dwarf, the Lord Guardian of the West did not want to let himself die every day. Because of his pitiful honor, Lord Tywin clearly wanted to die 1,000 times, but he still had to maintain the surface of decency, humiliation all the time, discrimination everywhere, just to let himself die. But I don't want to do what he wants. He wants me to never appear in front of him again, so I want to live openly and remind this damn father forever, you still have a dwarf son. Tywin, who didn't care about the little devil's expression, took off his armor with the help of his servants. For Robb Stark's age, he used his troops unexpectedly cautiously. It's rare that he didn't fall for it. But I'm better, and victory is victory. In the end, he is still a young boy with more courage than wisdom. Tyrion wanted to say something to mock him, but now Tywin had just won a battle, and no matter how much he mocked him, it would be useless. Tywin didn't care at all. At this moment, the two heard an urgent shout. Lord Tywin. Ser Adam Marbrand, one of Tywin's men, came riding a fast horse. As soon as he dismounted, the horse started foaming at the mouth and bleeding. Lord Tywin stood up to greet him. Ser Adam knelt on one knee in front of him. Your Excellency, we have captured some enemy leaders, including Lord Serwyn, Lord Wallace Manderley, and Lord Harrion Stark. We killed Lord Hornwood, but most of them have fled. They are not very willing to fight. Lord Tywin did not hear the news he wanted, and asked, where is that kid Stark? Ser Adam swallowed his saliva. According to the intelligence from the prisoners, Robb Stark did not go with them, but took 300 heavy cavalry to Reveron. What a young brat. He is more courageous than wise. Tyrion remembered his father's evaluation just now, and couldn't help laughing. Tywin was a little angry, but soon calmed down. He only has 300 people. What can he do, even if he goes to Reveron? Do you think he can defeat Jaime with only 300 people? Ser Adam reminded, there are still 4,000 people in Luon City. The number of people in Seaside City is unknown, and the number of defenders in Reveron is also unknown. Moreover, because Reveron is surrounded by rivers, Lord Jaime will surely disperse his troops in 3 places. Only in this way can Reveron be surrounded. If that little devil defeats them one by one. Tywin knew that he was tricked by a little devil. He finally understood why the troops of the north scattered as soon as they were touched. There were 20,000 people on his side and 20,000 people on the other side, but it was so easy to win. This was not very reasonable. It turned out that everything was for the cover of Robb. Unlike the little devil Tyrion, Tywin cared most about his son Jaime, who was his only recognized heir. Order the 3 armies to march to Luon City at all costs. All supplies and baggage can be thrown away, and advance as fast as possible. Yes, Ser Adam has followed Lord Tywin for many years, but this is the first time he has seen Lord Tywin lose his composure like this. The northern troops had just been defeated by the 20,000 men led by Tywin, and now they were retreating near the King's Road to rest. The Gregion's voice was as loud as thunder. Why don't you take the initiative? Let them kill so many of us in vain? The person he questioned was naturally the current commander of this team, Robb Bolton. We have 20,000 men, and the other side has about the same number. What's wrong with the fight? Robb Bolton ignored the Gregion's nonsense. We are no match for Tywin. They have more than 6,000 cavalry, and we have only more than 2,000. The equipment of the enemy archers is also better than ours. You're talking nonsense. One of our northerners can beat 10. Robb Bolton was too lazy to argue with this reckless man. I'm the commander appointed by Lord Robb. If you have any dissatisfaction, wait until this war is over, and then go complain to Lord Robb. Now you have to listen to my orders. Rickard Karstark was also anxious. His eldest son was captured by Tywin. He couldn't think about the problem calmly here. Then we can't do nothing. Our people have been captured. Robb Bolton comforted. We have captured some of their people too. Nobles will not kill each other directly. Just wait for the exchange of prisoners. Your son will appear in front of you intact. Although the army of the north was defeated, it still retained its manpower. The 20,000 man army suffered more than 2,000 casualties. But they only defeated a group of wildlings and mercenaries deceived by the little devil, and the main force led by Tywin was basically unaffected. Robb Bolton thought for a while. Since the other side has captured prisoners, they should have known that the young wolf went to support Reveron. They must want to support Reveron. We must adopt guerrilla tactics to harass them, and not let them join forces with the Kingslayer. After pacifying the remnants and formulating a new battle plan, Robb Bolton set off with the remaining soldiers of the north. The news that Robb defeated Jaime had not yet reached the battlefield on the other side of the river. At this moment, King's Landing knew nothing about the situation on the front line. Everyone thought that the war was about to end. Jaime would sweep across the entire riverland, and the next one would be the north. Early in the morning, King Joe, who loved his people like his own children, was excited. He was ready to do the first big thing since he took over. He wanted to try the former prime minister. Thanks to Wang Ziohui below for the monthly ticket. Chapter 25 Late letter. My mother asked me to let Lord Eddard wear black clothes, and Lady Sansa also pleaded for her father many times. Joffrey stared at Sansa with a smile on his face, then turned to face the crowd. That's because of their weak women's hearts. As long as I'm king, the crime of treason will be severely punished. Ser Rylin, cut off his head for me. Sansa on the platform and Era hiding in the crowd almost fainted. The current Queen Cersei hurriedly grabbed her son. She knew that this was not a wise decision. She had threatened Ned with her daughter's life and asked him to confess his crimes in public. Killing Ned now would only make Joffrey and the North completely dead. Why is the Mad King of the Targaryen family called the Mad King? Isn't it because he killed nobles indiscriminately, making everyone feel insecure, and finally being crowned with the title of Madman? The Archbishop of King's Landing, who was responsible for the trial of Ned, and the Minister of Intelligence, Octopus Spider, were also confused by Joffrey's words. How could this be different from what was agreed? Exclamation mark. One of them grabbed Joffrey's cloak, and the other excitedly spit at Joffrey. Joffrey shook his head and ignored the advice of these people. Because of Cersei's doting and the king's status, there is no one in the entire King's Landing who can make Joffrey change his mind. Cersei did not dissuade him too much. Her doting on her son was still greater than political considerations. Besides, her brother is killing people everywhere, so what kind of storm can the North cause? Amid the incredible exclamations of the crowd, Ned Stark was offline. In the King's Hall of King's Landing, Joffrey was playing with the jester. The incident of killing Ned 2 days ago made his self-confidence soar, and the whole person was a little ecstatic. Cersei sat on Joffrey's left, watching her son's nonsense with interest. At this moment, a servant walked into the magnificent hall with an exquisite gift box in his hand. Your Majesty, Queen, someone from the North sent a gift. Sitting below the king and queen, Sansa, who looked like a dead person, suddenly raised her head and moved her eyelashes. Joffrey subconsciously huddled up, but when he thought that it had only been a few days since he killed Ned and the Northern Army didn't know about it yet, he straightened up immediately. Then he thought that he was the king, and he became even more arrogant. Aha, is it the letter they are going to swear an oath and surrender to me? What's the name of that traitor? Carrot. Shit. Queen Cersei waved at the messenger, signaling him to bring the gift box to her. She wanted to see what was inside before deciding whether to show it to Joffrey. Because Joffrey was still a child, he had to be trained slowly. If Joffrey was told everything, he would probably be scared to death. After all, a new king appeared in the south, and Robert's third brother also rebelled. Sandor Clegane, the Hound of the King's Good, took the gift box and handed it to Queen Cersei through his own hands. Cersei had a nonchalant smile on her face, unwrapped the gift box and opened it. Bang! The gift box fell to the ground. Everyone in the hall was drawn to the gift box. Their eyes were not focused on the terrified and stunned Cersei, but on the things that rolled out of the gift box on the ground. It was a human arm and a letter. Joffrey was frightened and jumped up from his chair. He frantically fumbled around, trying to hold something. His mouth trembled a little. How dare he send such a thing to a king? It's disrespectful. Treason. Lady Cersei, I heard that you and the false Emperor Joffrey imprisoned my father. I'm deeply terrified. Please, madam, release my father and 2 sisters, and don't let them suffer any grievances. I heard that the Lannister family must pay their debts. I have admired your family for a long time, and I'm ready to follow suit. As revenge for my brother Bran's incident, and to ease your pain of missing your lover, I offer you the left hand of the Kingslayer Jaime. Sir Jaime lives well here with me. I'm ready to use him to exchange my family with you. I hope you will do it. From Robb Stark, the meeting in the hall ended in confusion. Cersei brought several ministers to the study. After reading the letter, she was so angry that she trembled all over. Damn Robb. The whole article was full of humble and respectful words, but there was no respect. Instead, it was full of contempt and threats. Damn it. Cersei didn't know where to start in the current situation. What should we do now? Ned is dead. Will he kill Jaime? The others didn't say anything. They didn't believe that it was Jaime's arm, but Cersei seemed very sure that Robb should have put a token in the gift box. Does that mean that the Lannister family's team has been defeated? Exclamation mark. Now she and others have failed to stop Joffrey from killing Lord Ned. If Robb breaks into King's Landing, the consequences will be. Cersei saw that they were silent and became a little angry. Each of you is useless. Finance Minister Petty Littlefina finally spoke. Madam, my suggestion is to agree to Robb's request and make peace with the North first. Intelligence Minister Octopus Spider objected. Peace. We killed Ned and let one of the little girls get away. Will Robb agree to exchange a little girl for the Kingslayer? How do you know if you don't try? Maybe we can pay a little more money. The oldest Grand Maester Purcell was not panicked at all. He was an old minister of 6 dynasties and had experienced several rebellions, but these had nothing to do with him. Isn't he still alive and well? After a long discussion, Cersei finally calmed down and made a decision. Write back to the traitor Robb immediately and tell him that we will treat his family well and send them back immediately. But Ned has been killed. If he asks for more money, we are willing to pay. Write to my father and ask him to return to King's Landing to defend his king. I don't want us to have only these few people when that fake king attacks. Petty, there is something you need to do. I heard that the House of Rose has formed an alliance with the fake king. They are just a group of fools with no ambition. They want their daughter to become queen and want to become prince. But we have a legitimate king here. Tell Joffrey not to make things difficult for Sansa. I heard that she forced Sansa to see her father's body a few days ago. If we force this little girl to commit suicide, we will be completely out of cards. When everyone left, Cersei clenched her palms so tightly that her nails were about to pierce the skin. Jaime, don't be in trouble. The tense situation made her feel irritated and empty. She paced back and forth, but still couldn't calm down. So she turned to the maid beside her and said, call my cousin Lancel Lannister over. Thanks to the Great Demon Kingsley and North Wind River for their monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.